Welcome, welcome to the Out There channel, live stream 157. I will just cue the intro and some music and just do some checks. Already Google's playing up. Same. Okay, so catch you in a minute. Okay, looks like it might be all working. Good to be back. Let me just switch screens. I've turned up on my mic a bit, so just hopefully it won't crackle, because we had the crackling problem before. So I need to pause that. Just have to get my head in the gear. So looks like it might be all working. I'll just bring up stuff and do a quick check. Is the screen rotating here? Let's have a look. Oh yeah. Again, I'm by myself. In fact, this will probably be my last Wednesday live stream. I'll talk about it in a minute. Just do some checks here by myself. Yes. Let's have a look. So sounds like it's working. Again, I'm by myself. In fact, this will probably be my last Wednesday live stream. I'll talk about it in a minute. Just do some checks here by myself. Okay. What does it say? Zero watching though. That's kind of weird. Yes. Alright, it's just updated. Okay, so feedback should end now. Why is it not going out? Oh, that'll do. Yep. So it stopped. Okay, so we've got a few things to go over today. I'm going to go through the quantum entanglement stuff, other theories out there, how it's working. Whenever you don't understand anything, you stick the word quantum in front and it sounds pretty cool, right? So yeah, some UFO stuff first, and then get onto the science. How come the lights haven't updated? Right, just as soon as I say that, it starts working. Okay, so I better type my welcome message down here. Is there anybody out there watching, or am I by myself? So, seems to be a lack of interest in my live sessions. I've been looking at stats. Out of 300 views on the last live, I only got 3 people to watch it fully. So I only got about like 600 minutes watch time from a 3-hour video. Is pretty bad. So in that case, I'm wasting my time trying to educate people with my presentations and critical thinking. So unless people get behind me and support me, there's no point in me carrying on, basically. But I will be doing my Sunday lives. I will do UFO chats. Hopefully get ill from MUFON on occasionally, and if not, just look over MUFON cases if no one wants to come on and talk. So I'll probably still do that. I'll probably spend some time doing little small videos, debunk videos like I used to do. I don't know, we'll just think about it, but my channel is not just about UFOs, it can be about science, like today's one will be mostly science. It also can be about paranormal and world strangeness that's going on. Various things like earthquakes or whatever. Hello, how's it going? Noah, I don't think I've seen you here before. Maybe I have. Maybe you're not visiting enough. So yeah, I basically do these unscripted, as that's fairly obvious. Most people probably spend a lot of time the night before making little bullet points of things they're going to say. I just write it out in my head from the cuff. So yeah, I stumble over my words sometimes, and I'm not even sure where my topic's going to go today. I'm just going to try and start from the beginning and try and explain things to people, and how this quantum entanglement could be misinterpreted, but there's something else going on that maybe they don't understand, and I'll be probably trying to talk about that in the sense of paranormal and also UFO connection. Always try and do that angle, because science is still evolving. Our understanding of the universe and all that. So, first of all, there's a new show that's come out. I'll just talk about that first. Let's see, I've got some stuff here. New show that's so far not too bad. It's got Ben Hansen. I'll just bring it up. And the new show intro's got this little image here to show a little clip of something that looks like it's entering the room. Like an apparition. The new show's called Ghost of Morgan City. It's kind of like a spin-off of Ghost of Shepherdstown, which had Nick Croft on that one, but this one's got, believe it or not, Ben Hansen. He's done a few presentations on, let's see, Fact or Fake Paranormal. He's an ex-FBI agent that studied body language and voice stress analysis and that sort of stuff. But now he's got his own lead show, I guess, in the paranormal. So he did actually try to debunk a lot of stuff on Fact or Fake. I'll just bring up his picture. But there was a particular case of a UFO that apparently had landed in a forest next to a lake, very similar to the video I looked at called Mojo's Alien UFO. Very similar to that, where he was filming lights in the forests, and suddenly they're filming this thing, trying to debunk it with their own sort of light system, and they catch a real UFO actually lighting up the forest, and it flies off, and they catch it on multiple cameras. stereo cameras, I think it was. He meant to have done a presentation at the UFO Congress about it, but I haven't seen it. You know, you have to pay money to see those things, which is a bit of a shame. It would have been good for him to see that presentation and see how good it was. So we're going to search on Ben Hansen. You'll know who I'm talking about when I bring up his picture. I wonder if that's his website there. There he is. Let's have a look at the other links. Is that him? Looks like him. So he grew up primarily in Utah. So does that make him religious? More than likely. Fact or fake? Yeah, he's got his stuff here. Most people don't trust ex-FBI or CIA agents. I know there are some meant to be working for MUFON even, right? We'll have a look at his bio there in a minute. So, how's it going out there, guys? Hey, Jay, Mr. J. How you doing? Long time no see. Yeah. Well, actually, I won't be doing Wednesdays lives if you've missed that opening. Basically, everybody's abandoned me. You know, even my inner circle, as you can see, are not on with me. So I have to get another co-host. People that's more interested in UFO stuff again. I think, like everything, even I'm bored with UFO stuff because it turns out to be mundane, right? It's like being a MUFON investigator. Once you do it for 10 years, you're used to seeing the same things in the sky, which are explainable through, obviously, science, through your techniques of analysis and all that, and all the tools out there. So yeah, anyone that joins me as a co-host debunking stuff, well, actually, I wouldn't call it debunking, just trying to analyze stuff and see if it could be real or not. Debunking is just like a bad word in everybody's mouth. People just get bored, you know. They realize that all the UFO videos being captured left, right, and center are pretty much 99% explained, right? So yeah, well, I don't know. Robert, I think it's the time zones at the moment. There, Mr. J. Jamal, I mean, you said that's not really your name, but we'll just call you Mr. J. What happened to John? John is busy with his mum, apparently, and he's doing his own thing on his own YouTube channel now. Nothing to do with UFOs, though. He said that he learnt a lot from me, and basically, I don't know, he just changed his whole entire outlook on the world, I guess, and decided to do his own thing on music on his channel there, which is doing particularly well at the moment. So, yeah, just go back to this footage here. So, when you look at UFO stuff, when you see it on TV, I'm not sure if everybody's got a critical mind or not on this sort of stuff, but when I see this picture here, I think, what's this here? Could it actually be like an apparition? It kind of looks like a person, doesn't it? It looks like a head. It almost looks like, you know, people in a sheet, right? Looks like a leg walking there. Until we see this actual episode that air on TV. I think there's 2 out at the moment on live streams. You can go and find them. But yeah, it kind of does look like a person. This one looks pretty good. But straight away I see stuff in this picture here. And I wonder if Ben Hansen will try and debunk it. You can see here it looks like we've got a mirror. All it takes is a light source, right, to reflect back at the infrared camera to cause like what they call IR glare, infrared glare back at the camera. So could it be like some car headlight passing by? It's reflecting off the mirror back at the camera. Also, another common odd thing that happens is you might get a spider that runs down the lens, and could be some sort of insect that's sort of walking on the screen, on the lens there for a minute and then flies off. I think it might actually be a real one though, so but we have to wait till the footage comes out. So it's quite interesting, that one. Then I might be able to debunk it better. Hey Renee, how's it going? So as soon as I say I'm not going to do lives, we've got a lot of people on. But I might start pushing them on a wee bit later. Again, who knows? I might do shorter ones. I do a weekend one anyway, or maybe even do 2 weekend ones. Who knows? I'll just change it a wee bit, I guess, and see how it goes. If people want to support me and actually come and watch a full session or help me debunk stuff on the side, that's great. I used to have like a couple of people on at a time searching Google with me to try and find images to match up with what I'm looking for. That was quite good back in the old days. Things changed though. So I'll just have a look. So if you watch, so we'll come back to Ben Hansen. I'll just have a look at this other ghost one I got that I debunked as well. Now, Ghost Adventures has been on TV with a new season, and I'll put out this one here. I'll just open it up a wee bit better. Can't remember what episode it was, but it's from the recent season here. So I'll call this one Bullshit of being an Apparition, because they're wearing this one-piece plastic reflective suit like you see in the movies there, where they got like a toxin in the environment, and he's wearing this face mask here, right, which has got a lot of reflective bits here, but when you zoom in here you can actually see it looks like the side bits of the face mask that he's wearing. So when he took this full spectrum, I think it is, you can see here the wall looks very reflective of some light. I think it might have a flash on it or something. It looks like it's reflected image of his suit himself taking the photograph, right? You can't see the other arm here. Looks to me like they're holding up a camera there on the edge there. And it looks like the other arm's just dangling down there. I think that there, I don't think it's a reflection. I think that might be further down the hall. But straight away I saw that and thought, hang on guys, you're not debunking this. It's clearly lens reflection back on the device. So yeah, when you come and look at that episode, see if you think it's Sack's saying reflection. Looks like there might be a doorway here even. Doorway. Looks like something reflective here. That's got to be on the wall, right? So have they got a piece like a glass window there? I'm not too sure. Of course, you got to remember these people don't walk around by themselves. They have actually a camera crew that follows them too. They used to be single, didn't they? So go and check them out. I'm not sure if anyone here is interested in the paranormal. Do you guys down the side watch the paranormal? Because I think it sort of links into the UFO field. Thanks, Mr. J. Yeah, I'll keep going. But I'll just... there's no point in me doing the 3 hours because no one's watching it, as I said. Out of 300 visits, out of 100 visits, only 3 people watched the episode from start to finish, because Google gives us all the stats, right? So we can see how many minutes people are watching. Most people watch like 5 or 10 minutes and then go on their way. But as mine are more like presentations and teaching as well, and it's unscripted, I got to search for the information online myself. I haven't got it all prepared. I got a rough idea of some stuff I'm going to talk about, and I might need to do extra searches. Depends on what people are interested in. If people like that sort of stuff, you know, how seeing what I'm doing to analyze stuff, and then you can actually duplicate it. Be more critical thinkers, or have a scientific mind where you question even what science is telling us. Because a lot of people regurgitate what's in science books and not even question what they're being taught. So I'm not sure how this volume's going. How's the audio sounding? Is my voice too low? Because someone said I was whispering last time. And I'm not happy with the new Google Stream system. It seems to be a lot less in the volume. And it seems to... I don't know. It's kind of strange. The mini cam, the audio going out to the video cam is actually louder than it is from the actual string part of it. So, you know, obviously I've got around that by boosting up everything. So if I go back to the old system, probably it'd be too loud. It'd probably distort on Google. So yeah. So you think it's all okay, do you? The volume? Cool. It's good to have people down the side that can let you know when things are going wrong, because you had that stupid crackle that ruined that good pyramid one I did. That was a good episode. That was some good science finds there put into an episode, and it was actually flowed quite good, despite me being interrupted by constant technical problems. It's like I'm being sabotaged all the time by various things, you know. It kind of puts you off. But yeah, I find all this stuff interesting, paranormal, because I've had my own paranormal experiences. We got to try and explain it. Is it really something that might be interdimensional? Could it be that, as I'm going to talk about in the science part coming up, about energies, how energies interact and communicate, store information. So what's the other stuff I got here? What's that bit there? Ah, right. I was talking about the last live here to team support. You can see I got 4 likes on that. I bet it's still the same today. I haven't checked. But my last live, 56, has only got 4 likes there. But my admin panel, so that one, and the admin panel says I've got 13. So what's Google playing at there? It doesn't make any sense. So if people see it's got less likes than the admin panel says, they may not watch it, right? They might think on 100 people watched it and it's only got 4 likes, you know. So that's a bit of a blow in the guts. And they said, oh, it's because their system is a bit slow updating. Actually, that's a good idea. We probably can check here, can't we? So my last live was this one here. Talking about the TR3B. About the thermal imaging camera they were using, night vision camera they were using. So if I click on that, it still says 4, and I got 2 downvotes. Thank you, downvoters. Thank you for that. That's because I talked about secure team on the front. Whenever you talk about secure team, people just go nuts. You know, that was that flare video I was talking about over the lake. Zero research, zero analysis, just opinions. Seems like a lot of people in the UFO industry just like people talking heads, I call them. They don't actually show you anything, don't go through stuff with you and analyze it. Just say, oh, here's a leaked document and it's real, right? You just have to believe them. So yeah, I don't know. That's one of the reasons of getting downhearted with all this UFO nonsense that's going on at the moment. Okay, thanks there, Hans. Not seen you around here before. You should have a name of Han Solo. Well, good nickname. Yep. Oh, cool. There was. I try to make it readable. You see a lot of streams have like the super high res mode and very fine fonts that you can't read, so I try and zoom in because I can't see myself, right? So I have to think, well, how's it going to play back for other people that have a bit hard to see sight, you see? So what was the other stuff I got here? Alright, I had some guy say some nice things about me too. It's very rare to get people to actually comment on the videos now, which is another thing. There's no interaction, so if people don't agree with you, they're not posting their comments, right? And of course, more comments the better, because Google sees it as an interaction on your video. And of course, that's part of their algorithm. Everybody's part of the algorithm. People that dislike, people like, people comment, they're all part of the algorithm. So more interaction is actually good in the Google's eyes. And also if you manage to get ads on it, because they're going to promote your stuff a lot more than the people that haven't got ads, right? So there's a catch-22. But frankly, I don't think I'm ever going to get ads back, because I have to meet this 4,000 hours watch time. That's quite a lot of watch time. I think my channel's probably had like 300,000 minutes watch time, which sounds a lot in 2.5 years. But unfortunately, it's not enough. You have to meet 4,000 hours per year to keep your ads. So little 10-minute videos are not going to help unless you got like a user base of 1 million people. But if I had 1 million people watching, I'd probably be doing live streams, right? Because you get more interaction then. And you get people thinking, and you get people submitting their own UFO footage that they're too scared to send it to MUFON, hopefully, or they didn't want to lose copyright on, or whatever. So he said, I'm new to this interesting channel. Something has puzzled me. How is that with 1.5k subscribers, the videos have only tenths of the views and only rare comments? It's unbelievable. Nice work. So yeah, I don't understand it either. 1,500 people. You should really have like about at least 100 people watching a live stream, right? I try to change all the times to suit even America, where most of the viewers are coming from. I think their number one is from USA. I think the second most might be UK, and the third one is probably Australia, I think, and the fourth one is probably Europe, and then the fifth one is New Zealand. So yeah, I think there's some in Asia as well, Philippines. So yeah, people from all over the place really, that's interested in UFO and paranormal stuff, and science, of course. No, it should be alright. If you get it playing on YouTube, that's one thing. Yeah, if you get the rotating arrow, that means there's a problem. Or it means that my stream has crashed and I haven't noticed. And I have to restart the software. It does happen sometimes. Windows 10 has been doing some crazy stuff lately. But it's good to have so many people on. So this is the thing. What's the time that people prefer? I've done a little. If you check the community page on my, because YouTube has now got a community page. I'm not sure if people know about it, but they've got a community tab here on your channel where people can do the polls. I've put some polls up there on the live streams and other questions, and like this: do you like how-tos and science theory topics added? And then you can go and vote. And then would you like more paranormal stuff or happy with just UFOs? and looks like we got someone interacting there already. So once we get the feedback, then we can sort of adjust the live streams to suit people a bit better. Do you like looking over MUFON cases, photos and videos on lives? So no one's answered that one yet, I don't think. Doesn't look like it. But you can also add a comment. So if the poll doesn't suit your thing, you can actually add more to it. So this gives you some interaction. And you can also comment on the actual video, of course, you know, the normal comments. But this can keep on going forever, and of course eventually if you get enough people, like 1,000 million people answering it, then it sort of gives you a good idea where people's interests lie. Do you watch UFO channels for entertainment and not for answers and truth? So we've got 67% don't watch it for entertainment, they watch it for truth. Or both. I suppose in a way it is entertainment. It's your interest, right? But when you got some people saying, "Oh, I just watch Secure Team because he's entertaining," but they don't realise that people put up fake stuff like him. He mixes it up, right? He's made fake stuff, but he ain't doing his own fake stuff anymore. I think he's using other people's fake stuff mostly, and like I said, the mundane UFOs that are out there, and just not really doing any analysis on it. So making people think they're seeing a UFO when they're really seeing other things. So there's a few questions there. There's probably a few more polls that we could add. So I just said there, if you can think of any other polls that you want added to the list, let me know. So yeah, get on to the next thing. I'll come back to Ben. Ben's an interesting character, I think. I'm not sure if any of you guys actually did watch Fact or Fake Paranormal, but it actually was a really good show. What they did is they used to look at all the viral videos, but look bit like I'm doing, you know, with the UFO stuff, seeing if it can be if it was faked or has other explanations for it. But they did it a wee bit more because they actually go and visit the people that did the videos, and it might be a abduction UFO case where they try and set up cameras to try and capture the events, and they did capture some strange stuff that happened. So I don't believe you can't document a UFO abductions, right? I think it's possible. You just got to have a scientific mind, and Ben Hansen was the guy to try and do that. He did some good debunks here. There was a one with the ghost car or something, where it seems to fly through a fence. But they figured that one out, which is kind of interesting. You know, why fence? You liked my older content. Yeah, well, my lives generally are a bit of a mix though, you know. It's just that there's been a lot going down in the UFO field that has to be sort of discussed or outed, or but I'm still looking for that amazing footage that they reckon is real, that we can analyze and say, haha, yes, can't see how it was done, if it was a hoax, blah blah blah, you know. I think the best footage out there is probably still buried, and if you filmed a UFO, right, and you're 100% sure that it's legit and all that, you're not going to sort of give it away, are you? You're going to sort of, even nowadays, they're going to put it up on some sort of YouTube channel where they can get some money from it, or because that's the problem with MUFON. They say that you lose copyright, but they don't realize you can take a segment off the video out and just upload it to MUFON and try and keep ownership of the full video or extras that you might have, which you won't sign over to the investigator, I guess. I know. I think they need to change the copyright policy, where it's like I don't know, shared maybe, or they can they can only have the copyright of it for a certain period, because they like to take the best cases themselves and do a symposium, right? So they like have sell $10 at the door for people to come in and actually do a presentation on their best UFO footage, which may not even be UFO footage because even MUFON get it wrong. They might go out there and think they've covered all the bases, but then they forget, okay, there's some new technology that's come out. Oh, these advertising blimps, right, with LED lights inside that light up at night time that some companies using down the street and they didn't realise. So you got to always keep your hand on the pulse of what's being produced in China and sold to all different countries. So yeah, going back to some stuff here. So I'm not sure if you've seen the Bob Lazar thing on Joe Rogan. It's well worth having a watch, even though I'm not a big fan of Rogan and not a fan of Bob by any means, and certainly Corbell. So I've said here on a statement that I've posted around my socials, where they were talking about, Bob was talking about that he was donating all his cash that he's been getting. But I said here, Bob might be donating cash, but Corbell needs the money to buy his cigarettes. Now, Corbell's definitely after the millions of dollars, and of course, money allows you to buy better equipment to make more movies and buy staff to help you out and all that sort of stuff. So Bob sounds pretty credible in the Joe Rogan, but you can start to see some sort of things that don't sort of really gel. He starts saying he's got a migraine and slipping up. He doesn't sort of spit out the information on the fly, and Corbell jumps in and says, "Oh, you expect him to not be able to remember things when he's got a migraine, blah blah blah." And then, just as it was getting really good in the interview, that Corbell jumps in and changes the subject completely, which is quite annoying. Just swing that back down a bit so I can see what's going on in the side chat. Joe was just barren down into all the good questions, and Corbell just sort of changes the whole direction again. I think maybe Joe was getting a bit annoyed with Corbell. So basically what I said here, sure, Bob worked there. That can be proven. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that Bob actually had some form of electronic job there at Area 51. They watched a experiment of some kind. So they talked about the Wednesday thing that they took out John Lear to the desert to watch the experiments. But don't mean it's not some form of plasma experiment or drone testing. So you can imagine if they're testing like radar absorbent material that they charge on a drone, you expect to see a glow, right, around it using some sort of plasma thing, or if it's going to be like some sort of weapon, like a plasma beam fired from it. So you never know what they were doing out in the desert. Obviously it was top secret, and that's why he had an NDA. So when he got caught doing these parties out in the desert, he had to hand in his ID, and he knew he was in trouble because he could go to prison for breaking NDA, non-disclosure agreements, right? So it makes sense that he would go to the TV network and say, "Oh, there's UFOs being tested, blah blah blah," when it's some other test being done. So you can see how it would go down, right? And if once you're on TV, it's a bit hard to throw him in prison, because then it brings more attention to what they're doing, even more so than some guy going there and all they have to do is deny it and say, "No, he's not worked for us," and all that sort of stuff. But the thing I've talked in previous lives was about the LIGO experiment. Whether even LIGO results are questionable at best, that they're detecting gravitational waves, which means that there is no gravitational waves in the universe, and the theory is actually wrong. And even if they can detect gravitational waves, the UFOs use waves, and they hardly detect anything at LIGO. So if UFOs are flying around, it should be like all voltmeters. It should be going up and the scale all the time as they're flying around, even on the other side of the Earth, because the gravitational wave's going to go through the planet. So they should be detecting them all the time, and it should be like absolute proof that gravitational waves exist. So I have my doubts that anything's being tested at Area 51 using gravitational waves. They might be testing something, but the science that Stephen's suggestion, I think, is wrong. So I do go over that in other lives. Do check them out, you know. I also look for this S4 location, and I found various documents where people said they used to walk around Pasco's Lake, where S4 was meant to be located, and they never saw anything in the hillside. And even so, they would have had sensors and all sorts of things there, and you would be arrested, right? And you'd be silenced. You'd be thrown in jail or prison even, right? So yeah, I don't think so. Something's not right with Bob's story. And of course, anyone could have guessed element 115. Like you can guess there's element 300. It's just going to probably take a million years to have the technology to make it, you know. So that doesn't prove anything. What else did I see here? He also got caught for criminal activity. He was transporting fireworks across borders. He also did a hookers prostitution thing from a house. Why he was even talking to what's the guy, George Knapp, who actually outed him to the cops and got raided. He's a narc. So that was that one. What's the guy saying down here? No, most of you probably believe Bob Lazar. Corbell. Bob Lazar has 2008 special on US Netflix. Whoa. Bob Lazar or Corbell? I think you mean Corbell, don't you? Your competitors right now is old episodes of BuzzFeed, Paranormal, and that chapter. Go comment there and tell them about your streams. Well, really, that's how you get noticed, is other people like yourself watching will promote the streams for you. Because self-promotion doesn't really work. I know I've sort of commented it to some, like John, that were on following Secure Team religiously, and when I pointed out, hang on, this guy's not all that he's cracked up to be, and he actually has fake stuff. So, like, if you would you trust anyone on the news channel that had faked an interview, right? And said, I interviewed this actor, and he said this to me, blah blah blah, and get the guy arrested or whatever, you know. And then later you find out that he actually fabricated the whole interview or event. You wouldn't trust that reporter ever again. You'd sack him or whatever. Which has happened with CNN apparently, and some other news networks out there, because they can get away with fake news. YouTube, you're less likely to get away with fake news, I guess, with the new censorship going down. But Secure Team come close to losing the money, but he got it back, and I don't know why. A lot of channels out there have lost their monetization. I think Alien Scientist lost it because he had stuff on 9/11. But you can get it back though. If you know what videos they don't like, you can take those ones down, right? Maybe even unlist them, I don't know. But definitely you could delete them. Put them up on BitChute, like I do. I put stuff up on BitChute now. Because I just don't trust Google, how it's sort of going down. I don't think anyone should be censored, not even security. Like, he should be able to do whatever he wants. But I don't think he should be duping people for money. So people like Patreon shouldn't be supporting them, because people are paying for the UFO stuff. They're not actually paying him for the entertainment side of it. It should be made clear. You know, he should just come out clean and say, yeah, I faked all this stuff, but I've changed or whatever. Maybe just see how it goes. But if you look at his stats at the moment, I think he's only getting like 70 to 50,000 watches a day at the moment. So out of 2.1 million people, that's kind of means that he's in trouble there. That people out there waking up to the BS that he's putting out. Me, I've always been constant. I've always been putting out theories, opposing theories, UFO stuff. In fact, I've even put up my own UFO sighting on the first episode, I think. Or maybe the fourth episode, I can't remember, or second episode, or something like that. I even debunked my own UFO sighting, so just to show people what I did, even on the very second episode. But back then it was pretty crude. I only had a $2 mic. So just coming up to the end of the UFO stuff, and then I'll get on to the quantum entanglement. So this is the other thing, is that the UFO documents coming out, and the To the Stars stuff. And I put out this statement here, which I thought was quite good to keep a copy of. Probably should just zoom in normally, that way, probably. That way I can see the side chat. So how's these guys going down the side chat? It's hard to believe that even, you know, people say keep it short, but just talking about all the stuff, right? It's 48 minutes already. It's just crazy. Let me just check the sound volume. I just do random checks now and then. I'll just zoom in a bit. Google is fine. It has been here on YouTube since 2006. The rules are meant to keep order out of chaos. Well, actually, it's a bit more tricky than that. Google plays around with who they're promoting. Rather than it be driven by the people, Google are trying to control what the people watch. So, Rogan is a stooge. Not too sure that's true. I think he's just like a TV host, you know. He's sort of firing questions at people and getting responses, and people like to hear what they've got to say. Don't think he's a stooge. He has his own opinions and the theories, and some of it's all wrong, of course. Because the gimbal thing, right? If you have a listen to that Rogan show, Corbell jumps in and starts talking about the cold halo around the UFO image. That's in fact wrong. Anyone that's been following me since the year dot will know that there's a lot of artifacts that you get with compression, video compression, artifacts with the actual sensors, the glass that you use on front of the sensors, and so on. So the halo around the UFO, in fact, is something to do with how the software is probably interpreting the image coming in, because it's not actually a raw image on thermal on these targeting systems. It's actually computer generated, right? So They put this little halo around it. According to Mick West, I think he said it was some sort of thing called a masking to make the object stand out around, because you can see it automatically tries to track and lock in the object for missile firing. They want to make the object more, the outline of the object more visible to what it could be, because pilots get used to the heat signatures of certain planes. Makes a different pattern on it, because they're saying that UFO didn't have a engine on it, and it's not actually a thermal pattern of the engine, may be incorrect, and it's not actually the heat of the skin of the craft. So it's not really hot, but the outside of it really cold, because that's just a misinterpretation. I'm a bit surprised on that unidentified show that the pilots even said the same thing. Oh, what's that whiteness around it? Is it really cold? That means it's really cold on the thermal. See, it seems like they didn't understand either. Maybe when they see it in their own headset, they see it differently. It's possible to what's being recorded and playback, right? So you guys got to keep questioning everything, like I keep telling people out there, because you make mistakes otherwise. You got to keep learning. I make mistakes and then I correct it later. You know, something I didn't know about particular CMOS sensor that may have changed or whatever. You know. So here I said. I posted it on Discord and I just did a screen grab. Perhaps one idea no one has said, it's reverse tech they put into the drone as much as they could figure out so far. So if you get like a crashed UFO, right, they still probably haven't figured it out. It's like a smartphone landing in the middle of High Street of London couple of 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. What would they do with it? How would they? Even me and you wouldn't know how to make a silicon chip, how to make a silicon wafer, and the technology and the thousands or millions of minds that got into the technology that makes it now. We're so reliant. If China got wasted, I think our world would be stuck, because there would only be a few little shops, pockets or factories in USA or New Zealand that could make stuff. They were going to try to make a Silicon Valley in New Zealand, Christchurch here, but we didn't have enough power. Apparently these factories need a lot of power, robots and all that sort of stuff. We only got enough to supply to the country, you know, for human use and business, you know, shops and stuff. We don't have nuclear power stations. You can't just pop up another nuclear power station and have more power. China doesn't have much nuclear power. I think it has a lot more coal burning. It takes a lot of coal from New Zealand and Australia and ships it over there and burns it. So yeah. So they got this UFO. Say Bob Lazar's right. They got a UFO and they haven't figured out how all the things work on it, but they figured out maybe 10 years on, you know, which was 2004, that how the anti-gravity part of it works, right? And they think, oh, well, let's build a drone with this new found knowledge and see if we can make an anti-gravity drone. DARPA or someone like that. But then they test it out, you know, they want to test it out, see how fast it goes and all that, but then they want to use it as a weapon. As usual, government or military, they're obviously driving a lot of the technology. A lot of our technology comes from military research, right? What they do is US government pays $1 trillion to military, and then they carve it up and they send some to universities for research on maybe laser technology or radar technology, computer technology, quantum computers and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so what they want to do is they want to try out against a real battle simulation. So a lot of people say that they've come out and said it's not their own technology, but they haven't asked everybody. You've got all these contractors out there, right, that they subdivide stuff out, which we found out recently through To the Stars, right? Reason why people didn't find it in Freedom of Information requests is because they hid it in plain sight by outsourcing it to a contractor like Bigelow, who is a private company, and it doesn't have to reveal any of their records or what they're doing within that private company, all the research they're doing, see? So it's a good way to hide stuff in plain sight, which may have been happening for years and still is probably. With those that recent UFO leak of the century that we talked about, it talked about outsourcing to one contractor, but it doesn't mean that one contractor didn't subdivide bits of it and put it out to other contractors where they didn't have the resources or the manpower to look at it. So they may have got one working craft, has a reactor they can't figure out, but they learn how to get basic anti-gravity is what I'm saying here, working, and with some basic nuke cell, because they haven't got so-called element 115. If it's true, what they've got is what we've got at the moment, nuclear cells, which are used on spaceships and rovers and stuff like that, and probably secret planes that are flying around the sky with nuclear cells that everyone would panic about if they knew about it. So that could be another reason why they won't come clean. You can't say, oh, we just made this high advanced tech drones using nuclear cells, because people would freak out, saying, what if one of those crashes into my house? And then you got nuclear radiation or whatever. So yeah, so they may have got a nuclear cell with anti-gravity working and a drone big enough to do a drone, and of course they haven't managed to work out how to do the field, the inertia field around it, which is what I'm talking about here, to protect the people inside the craft. So the next best thing would be to make a drone, remote controlled by radio, or artificial intelligence, or both, right? So the drone is the next obvious idea. And of course you've heard on unidentified shows so far that the pilots often talk about, well, it could be a drone, right? So they're not even sure whether it's alien. They're not saying it's alien technology. They're just being careful and saying, well, it could be some other country's technology. But I still think it could be something that's been hidden within the government still, until we get all the departments and contractors coming out and saying it's not ours. And even then they could be lying, so maybe it'll never be solved, right? So here we're looking at the idea that it's both things. It's alien technology but being used by humans. So that means that aliens did come to Earth and they did crash, and maybe it's not very frequently that the aliens come here. Maybe, who knows? Might be something that's rare that you get to only a few people get to see occasionally, because 99% of the UFO sightings out there are mundane, explainable, right? And it's that 1%. Well, they said it was 5%, but I think it's probably more like 1% after doing this for years now. What did I say? I said crash, shot down, government covered it up. So if the government know about aliens and shot it down, and then they're reversing the technology, they're not going to want to tell the Russians about it, are they? So they want to have like superiority over the sea and airs. This is why this thing goes under the sea as well, right? Because if you've got an anti-gravity device that can sort of make a basic shield around it, which they can only get it working with their low-grade nuclear cell, but can't make a bigger craft for people, It should be able to go underwater and force the water molecules to expand away from it, so it's not actually a force anymore. I wonder what happens when a UFO like that comes across a well or something. Does it sort of push it out the way? Or go straight through it? Maybe it's got some sort of what I was talking about a few lives back about quantum tunneling, where an object can go through another solid object. The theory's out there. Like most things, I like to stick the word quantum in front of thing, where because it sounds pretty cool. So in 2000, they may have had a breakthrough in technology. As you know, humans advance exponentially in their technology breakthroughs, and it's not till 2004 that maybe some sort of new analysis comes out where they finally figure out how the anti-gravity device works, and then they start building one for a prototype. So DARPA pretty much covered it now, I think. So the craft apparently is similar size to an aircraft, F-18, if you've seen the pictures last time that I talked about to the stars. So it could quite easily have a couple of nuclear payloads underneath that can drop bombs or cruise missiles or whatever. So it makes sense that the government will still be covering up even now that it's come out on TV. And it might be only a few people need to know, right? So that's pretty much my UFO bit taken up there. So double slit. I'll just go through that, I guess. I'll just catch up with the side comments. Well, yeah, I should talk about Ben Hansen here, have a read of his bio, because I don't know much about him. I just know he was ex-FBI. So, what he's saying down here? UFO, Japan airline, UFO incident over Alaska. Yeah, that one's quite interesting. And of course the radar data was taken, wasn't it? Again, there's going to be a lot of these cases that were covered up. But it doesn't mean it wasn't man-made again, because I talked about these stealth blimps that the American government were working on. That obviously looks like it's anti-gravity, but it could be like these floating motherships that, but like Captain Scarlet, where they're in the sky all the time, that can drop down planes and be high enough up that only missiles can fire at them. But of course, you might have self-repairing material where a missile could explode but not actually bring it down or pass right through it. And of course, being radar invisible makes it really hard for targeting systems, and also if it's thermal cloaked as well, or using LED technology to actually make it invisible to the visible spectrum even, it probably could go unnoticed. Of course, they could be using these plasma ion engines where it doesn't actually need fuel either. The air itself that it's sucking in becomes the plasma, and of course you get ions as well. Yeah, Phoenix Lux is another interesting case. John apparently talked about his experience with the Phoenix Lights, or other people's that he knew. Quantum entanglement, synchronized qubits, spooky action at a distance. Yeah, I'm going to go over that in a minute. It's actually quite deep, but there are some problems with it, and appears dark matter can be accounted for in Einstein's theories if you allow speed of light to change. Yeah, but that's only that's all based on the Big Bang again. The Big Bang is wrong. Okay, let's just keep on going. So what's Ben saying here? Second oldest of 6 kids, so that sounds like a religious family. Supportive parents encouraged him fully. Ben's dad enrolled him in sports and coached dozens of athletic teams, while his wife signed him up for piano and trumpet lessons, kindled within him an interest for music. Ironically, she was also the one who taught him how to fish, camp, and shoot gun. Okay. Because his parents were so supportive, Ben developed an obsession for trying new things, especially if it involved earning certificates. So he's done scuba diving, falconry, hang gliding, EMT, search and rescue, Boy Scouts. Sounds like the good old American boy. Certificate in criminology and corrections, Spanish minor, a year of study abroad in Australia. Okay, so how did you get interested in UFOs? And oh, I better go down. How did you get interested in UFOs and paranormal? So it doesn't quite tell us, does it, at that stage? Inspired by TV shows like X-Files, which were popular while he was in high school, Ben cemented an interest in both a desire to work in public service for an investigative agency and an insatiable desire to explore mysteries of the unknown. After graduating college, he worked for several private and public agencies, including investigating child sex crimes and severe physical abuse on the Utah County sex crimes. Okay, so he's done a fair bit then. Ben also felt compelled to seize an opportunity presented to him to assist in forming a new investigative reality TV show. Departing from the mainstream paranormal shows prevalent at the time, this new show would not only conduct observation-based field investigations, it would focus primarily on alleged evidence already at hand. The age of the internet has brought with it the sharing of thousands of allegedly paranormal viral videos and photographs. People with a sincere curiosity for the unknown are often left with the tremendous and exciting task of shifting through the hoaxes and naturally explainable cases, which is basically what I've been trying to do. Ben and the show developers felt that after a methodical process of examination, whatever evidence remained unexplained. So he's talking about the sci-fi hits show there, Fact or Fake Paranormal. I'm surprised that people still haven't seen it out there. It's a good show. Especially if you're interested in mysteries and UFOs and ghosts. So I wonder if he talks about his new show. You may have all seen Ben on shows such as UFO Declassified, Canada. Mysteries of the Outdoors. I don't think I've seen that one. Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates. Yeah, I've seen him on there. Ghost of Shepherdstown. Yeah, he was on a couple of episodes. That's where the offshoots happened. So now he's on a new show called Ghosts of Morgan City. Go and check it out after the live stream. Well worth having a watch. It's got this medium on it. I'm not sure if anyone believes mediums or psychics out there, but yeah, I don't know. I was sort of on the fence with them. I'm pretty sure though that some human brains can function in a way that they can detect things. A bit like we use electronic meters and science equipment. So who's out there on the side chat? Anyone other than Hans? Hans seems to be liking to talk a bit there. Is Mr. J about still, or has he gone on his way? And Rene, I think you're the three people watching today. The lucky three. So that was all that was there. Don't remember seeing anything about FBI there though. It is kind of small writing. Task Force. I suppose we could search for FBI. Oh, actually, we'll just do a Google. Ben FBI. See if that comes up. And so it did say there. His training and work later brought him to work in the position of special agent for the FBI. This time serving at the state and federal levels. I must have missed that bit. Doesn't say much about FBI though, does it? Hey, Mr. J, you're still here. Good. I thought I might have bored you. The FBI was one of the last and perhaps the most well known of my former employees. So there you go. Enough on that. We better move on to the next topics, which are quite deep. So I talked about Oscam's razor before, where I did say it was like making too many assumptions, and I think the other guy said, no, you got it wrong. But basically it's about always the simplest solution is always the right answer. In other words, don't make too many assumptions. When you make assumptions in a lot of things, it makes it more complex, but like the Big Bang Theory, they keep making assumptions, dark matter and dark energy, the age of the universe, so that light is a constant speed, and the edge of the we can see only to the edge of the universe is so many billion years old. But what if light has a certain length of time it can travel, right? So yeah, you might get to the edge and find it still goes on. It changes the whole theory, right? You might find that the universe is actually a big soccer ball where you're seen to the edge of where you are in the middle, and you see it as a circle, and you can't see beyond the circle until you sort of move. A bit like when sailors were sailing around the globe, right? They didn't know if the earth was flat or round or whatever. Just get rid of that one there. So Occam's razor. So that's the first thing that you might hear people talk about. You hear people talking about pseudoscience and quantum science, quantum theory, quantum mechanics, and there's a big debate between who's right. To me, it's hard to know. I think the quantum people tend to make up a lot more mathematics, and mathematics is not proof in itself. They may be making conclusions from something they observed through and can match mathematics to it, but there may be some other conclusions that you can draw from the same outcome. I've talked about that before, about the Big Bang and also gravitational lensing. that electric universe, although they might not be fully correct, and they're still, some of them are hung on the Big Bang idea. Some of the scientists, their theories actually are quite interesting and possible. Like the gravitational lens and actually being an atmosphere around the sun from the suns that's passing through is bending the light like refraction. So yeah, this did I post it? It didn't actually go, does it? Did it post? Did I post it now? Seems to be not selecting it for some reason. Kind of weird. But anyway, move on. So, I suppose before we talk about the double slit experiment and the science behind it, we need to understand the basic science. So, I'll come back to that one and that one. Here's the one I'm looking for. Okay, so I've always said that everything is energy. So even elementary particles, as I call them, are just dense energy. That makes sense because that statement there about Einstein was right. You can turn energy into matter, right? Which I'll come back to and go through that. So if you can imagine that even these marble-sized particles, because they know some of them are definitely spherical, ball-shaped sphere type things by bouncing off other particles off them, and it ricochets off in a pattern, and they can see it has a curvature. So they know that if it's dense energy particles, that it's obviously going to be like a fractal based mathematics to how it sort of maintains its structure. So there's a few people out there thinking that way, that they call the fractal universe, fractal energy. Energy's all around us. So instead of thinking three-dimensionally, think fourth-dimensionally of this. As I talked about before, Einstein talked about this ether that's all around us, where our normal matter absorbs energy all the time from this ether, which actually makes perfect sense, really, because when you think about it, this is where the dark energy and possibly dark matter can come into it. So there may be a bit of truth and everything, and it doesn't matter. It's not black and white, but it's actually the grey region in between that makes the difference. And people have always got to question everything, is what I'm saying. Always trying to understand each sides of the argument and see if you can pull the best bits from both. But at the moment, there's a lot more theory out there than actual practical uses. Even as I pointed out in the quantum computer, qubit, and all that stuff that I was talking about probably 10, 12 live streams back, they don't even know how it works, right? As someone in the side chat said, spooky action at a distance is what Einstein said it was. So what are all these elementary particles? So let's see if I can open that up. Will it open? Just zoom in it. Right, so it sort of brings it up. Standard model of elementary particles. So we got quarks, as they call them, gluons, Higgs boson, I reckon, leptons, gauge bosons. Okay, so where's everything fit here? So we know about photon because we see it every day. But photon is a different type of particle. It's a unique type one. But they reckon they can smash protons into other smaller particles. So we got also the electron here, muon, neutrino, blah blah blah. Right. To me, if you just look at those as really dense energy particles that have a different movement inside them, which creates the field around them. They talk about negative and positive charges. So if you can think about that, they talk about this up-down quark. It's just a dense energy that's moving maybe in a particular strange pattern, which makes it obvious that it spins off in a different direction when it bounces off something or breaks out or whatever, Photon, as we know, has a whole spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that comes from it. And really it's just a packet of energy. They call it a packet energy. They don't actually really see it as like a round sphere. Photon is a different thing altogether than the building blocks of atoms. So I've talked about before about energy, dense energy, and as fractal spheres. See if we can get some images up. So you can imagine it's similar to these ideas here of what's inside a proton. They say it's built up of quarks, right? But it might be just how it breaks up and it forms more stable energy packets, smaller and smaller, to maintain itself without causing, explosion or whatever. So yeah, some interesting fractal patterns here. Just trying to find the one I like though. Probably not going to find it. Yeah, look at that one. It's like a honeycomb. Yeah. As usual, I can't find the one I'm after. Where it actually looks like a load of electromagnetic waves inside it, and it just forms the shape of a sphere. And you can see that being what's in an atom. So that kind of breaks into the UFO field a bit, because if you can imagine that all particles are energy, right? If you can interfere with the fractal energy thing and actually get it so energy can pass through other energy, it's not actually thinking it as a solid as such, you're thinking it as pure energy. So energy passing through a solid matter, matter itself is energy, so you're passing through energy. Plus there's a lot of open spaces in atoms as well, as you know. When you scale it down to our thinking of scales, right? Football fields and all that sort of stuff. Solar systems, like the sun would be like the nucleus of an atom, and the planets on the outside would be like electrons spinning around on the outside of it. That sort of thing. I can't seem to find that fractal pattern I'm looking for. Maybe I should do a different search. Maybe ball. I have put it up before. Probably got it on thumbnail or something. Fractal energy, maybe. See if that comes up. Now there's spiral that we often see in nature. Remember that golden number they talked about? There was a UFO movie, Fibonacci sequence. The what is it? 1 over 0.37 or something. So we talked about that previous life as well. Yeah, I just can't seem to find the one I'm after. That one's close to it. But yeah, you get the idea. Let's see, what else do we need to talk about there on the fundamental particles? Elementary particle or fundamental particle is a subatomic particle with no substructure, thus not composed of other particles. Particles currently thought to be elementary include fundamental fermions, quarks, leptons, antiquarks. Antiquark to me is like the energy that's going opposite to the other quark, right? It's like looking at it, spinning in a different direction, creating a different field because it's spinning in the opposite direction, right? So one's going to become a positive and one's going to become a negative. Matter. So when you start looking at science and then try and connect it to the UFO field phenomenon and also ghosts and paranormal, it starts to get a bit more interesting. Rather than being like pseudoscience, maybe it's not pseudoscience. So if you can imagine that we're like pure energy, we're matter. When we die, we break down back, the atoms break down into their subcomponents, right? But the energy within the atoms itself is still there, right? So that's the other thing is, can energy itself have information in it? So this is the idea that I talk about dogs. Dogs seem to have this knowledge that's not taught to them. Like my dog, he knows to sniff out certain blades of grass for a certain scent to eat when he feels sick. Now, he was never shown that by his mother because he was too young, and he certainly hasn't learned it from other dogs because he's normally with me all the time. So yeah, it's like a known knowledge, and we talk about DNA and RNA, which is sort of getting off track a wee bit. And RNA is obviously made up of, DNA is made of 4 acids, and RNA is like a polymeric molecule essential in various biological roles in coding. So yeah, we won't go into RNA too deep, but it's all atoms, right? And atoms, if they've got this energy, it could be like billions of bits of information in the energy where knowledge can be stored, and there may be a way for us in a subconscious way to access that information. That they say that there's been experiments where they've done heart transplants, and the people that get the new heart actually have this cravings of the donor. Say if a guy died in a motorbike accident and they receive his heart, sometimes they have craving for fast food all of a sudden because that person used to like McBurgers or whatever. So there is some sort of fringe science there to do with the RNA. There's a couple of people that are sort of pushing the idea that there is some sort of knowledge stored within the DNA itself, which kind of makes sense. This is where the spooky action at distance comes in as well, is people talking about PK energy and transmitting thoughts over distance. But yeah, maybe get into that another time, or whatever. Time's flying past. But I don't think it's to do with entanglement. I think entanglement is a misdirection. I think this is a better idea that I'm talking about here about energy, and that somehow this ether that's all around us, or dark energy, if you want to call it dark matter, that's all around us, but we can't see it. We may be connecting our subconscious into this level of energy field, and it, like a telephone thing, it's acting like a cable between two people. So you're actually going to get some thoughts. You know how you sort of pick up a phone and you know who it's going to be, or you say the same things on an internet chat where you're sort of chatting in real time with each other, and you say the same, come up with the same topic out of the blue. So it's quite interesting stuff, you know. To me, that's not quantum entanglement though, because when we go through what quantum entanglement is, and duplicate particles, entanglement particles, it's talking about splitting the particle into two pairs. That's not happening obviously with humans and long range thought. Somehow we're connecting into an interface somehow that's sort of transferring knowledge back and forth. So when you die, it's possible that all this energy has encoded information, the essence of what you were, all the things you had learnt is stored in those atoms which get recycled, right? So maybe we're like a living biological computer, and maybe that's what the universe is, you know. Maybe we're part of something bigger in that respect, that we're trying to, the aliens are sort of changing our code, so to speak. Maybe, you know, people are talking about they've seeded the planet and all this sort of stuff. So it sort of can jump into that sci-fi realm of things. I'm not too sure what these guys out there think about all that sort of spooky stuff, or crazy stuff. Yeah, I got Bell's theorem here. Also, that has some problems. Yeah, but produces a wave as particle. Yeah, yep. Okay, so what is I think that's enough on probably particles. Maybe photon. Let's see. So we got some stuff here to cover. Do I need to read out anything else on fundamental particles here? Of course, this is what they're doing at CERN. They're trying to smash, what was it, protons or neutrons into each other and stuff, and trying to see what they break down to. Crash stuff into other atoms, gases and stuff. See the ionized trail. So that's how they reckon they found the Higgs boson. But yeah, I have my doubts about the boson. I think there's some other ways you can explain how we feel pressure when we touch our fingers on, say, a tree. It has resistance because atoms are not actually joined together. They're sort of bonded together through the electromagnetic and other pulls that are generated through the energy, right? So the energy spinning around. This is sort of recycling the energy so it doesn't break down. We're not talking about radioactive activity here. That's something different. So just can I post that one? Let's have a look. Elementary particle. It's elementary, dear Watson. So I have found some interesting stuff out that people have explained. I'll post the links. How they debunked it. Particles. Might have to put the heat on. Looks like it's getting cold outside. It was a nice sunny day before, and let me just get a drink and put the heater on. Let's see. I'll just read that out with the reader probably, and just do a couple of things here on the side while it's doing it.
Albert Einstein.
Hopefully, I've adjusted the volume down a wee bit, and my volume up on the mic, because it seemed too loud last time. So, yeah, can't remember what this one was talking about now. But we'll just read it out. I'll try that much.
Albert Einstein proposed the most famous formula in physics in a 1905 paper on special relativity titled "Does the inertia of an object depend upon its energy content?" Essentially, the equation says that mass and energy are intimately related. Atom bombs and nuclear reactors are practical examples of the formula working in one direction, turning matter into energy. But until now there has been no way to do the reverse, turn energy into matter. What makes it particularly hard is that C2 term, the speed of light squared. It accounts for the huge amounts of energy released in nuclear reactions, and the huge amount you'd need to inject to turn energy into matter. Previous experiments have always required a little bit of mass, even if it was only an electron's worth. Albert Einstein's famous formula triumphs again, photo credit, Don Quixote, but scientists at Imperial College London, including a visiting physicist from Germany's Max Planck Institute for Nuclear Physics, think they've figured out how to turn energy directly into matter. You may also like Oliver Pike, Felix McInroth, Edward Hale and Steve Rose have suggested a way to turn a pair of photons, particles of light, into an electron and its antiparticle, a positron. They came up with the idea in less than a day, over several cups of coffee at Imperial S. Blackett Physics Laboratory. They started off talking about fusion, but realized their work could be applied to an earlier problem, an idea proposed by two US scientists, Gregory Briett and John Wheeler, in 1934. Briett and Wheeler, who went on to work on America's Manhattan Project to build the first bomb, thought it was theoretically possible to smash two photons together to produce an electron and a positron. Despite all physicists accepting the theory to be true, when Briett and Wheeler first proposed the theory, they said that they never expected it be shown in the laboratory, said Professor Rose. Today, nearly 80 years later, we proved them wrong.
So how about that? Quite an interesting article I found here. Goes on a wee bit. So that means you can go the opposite direction, right? So from pure energy, you should be able to form these dense energy particles, which we call atoms, or made up of other subatomic energy particles, which is just energy. So yeah, just read out the wee bit here more.
Their article in Nature Photonics proposes that a new kind of collider be built, one that smashes photons instead of protons, as at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, where the Higgs boson was discovered last year. Their accomplishment has huge implications. Not only does it yet again prove an aspect of Einstein's theories, it recreates a process that was important in the first 100 seconds of the universe, and that is also seen in gamma-ray bursts, which are the biggest explosions in the universe, said Imperial. The first step would be to accelerate electrons with a high-energy laser to just below the speed of light, 300,000 km/s, and smash them into a slab of gold, which would create a beam of light 1 billion times more intense than the light from the sun. This would be aimed into a hollow gold shell called a Hohlraum, German for empty room. The shell would be excited by another laser to create a thermal radiation field that emits light akin to starlight.
Don't you just like scientists? So yeah, most of them don't talk in layperson's terms, and they wonder why people probably don't want to get into science. because yeah, a lot of it's just some crazy ideas for sure. But I'll let you read out the rest of that yourselves. It's energy to matter article. 37. It's 37 here. You're lucky. I think it's probably dropped down to about 8 degrees here Celsius. Doesn't that sound like UFO anti-gravity technology? What does? About energy and fields, for sure. The thing is to understand what gravity is. Obviously, it's going to be something similar to the other stuff we know about electromagnetic radiation, right? So it's going to be some sort of other flux field that attracts the energy particles together, which we call matter. So yeah, I've talked about that previously with Tesla's documentary I did, and some couple of lives I did on how UFOs hover. So if you haven't watched those lives, go ahead and dig them out. But yeah, moving on. It's a pretty heavy topic, really, because quantum. Anytime you mention quantum, it's pretty heavy in mathematics and theory and trying to wrap your head around it. So we're going to talk about the double slit experiment. So I just wonder if we can find an example where they're doing it live. Would be a lot easier. So the initial double slit experiment, right, was using light. Back in the old days, they were talking about whether light was a particle or a wave form. And now we've got this idea that it's like a particle and also like a wave, which sounds absolutely crazy. But when you start to look at what a photon is, if you can imagine a photon being something different to a particle, let's see if I can draw a picture of it. Looks like we've lost one viewer. Hopefully they'll watch the rest later, maybe. So we got the normal particle, which I'll draw it with that. Right, which is like dense energy. But photon's not like that. It's probably not even a sphere. It's probably more like something like this one here, probably. Let's see how that one comes out. It's more like that. Like an energy packet moving through space, and around it is creating what they call electromagnetic radiation. And of course, photons come from from electrons, which are ejected from electrons, which spin around the outer edge of an atom. So if that was an atom there, or this is an electron, it can eject a photon, but it also can absorb a photon. And they talk about when it absorbs the energy, because it's an energy packet, it changes the energy level of the electron that's orbiting the atom, right? So let's see if I can draw what I'm talking about. They call it shells around the atom, electron shells. So they're saying that the electrons orbit an atom. Just want to make it smaller. In shells, and they can jump. Not they don't absorb into the nucleus. They sort of have a lower level, which is possible, I guess. Sort of makes sense. If you just think of it as energy, and then you got this other energy field that's sort of getting really close to the energy center of that particle, but it's not going to go any further. It's like two opposing magnets, so it's not going to go any lower than the lowest level while it spins around the outer side. So when a photon is absorbed into an electron, it actually changes the energy of the electron, which makes it jump to another level outwards from the atom. So if it absorbs from, let's see, if it absorbs into this level here, it will actually jump to the next level up in energy level around the atom, if that makes sense. So I just have to find that little thing about the photon. So they talk about here photon, so I'll just read that out here because it's quite an interesting explanation. So if you just think of a photon as not like a normal particle, then it starts to make more sense. So if you can imagine this energy packet floating through from the sun through the atmosphere and hits our body, this energy packet has an electromagnetic wave that it produces through space like this here. This is actually an electron moving down a wire, an electromagnetic wave, right? It produces what they call it, electric field in red and magnetic field in blue. As you know, electric motors generate electromagnetic that causes it to spin. But yeah, we can just think about it like that, like a particle that's energy particle that's moving through space, and it's creating this wave-like interference around it, which we call radiation, like infrared spectrums and microwave radio. So if you think about it in that respect, it sort of makes sense. It's like an invisible force field. We just treat it like a force field. So it hits your skin, the top of your skin, causes pigmentation changes, as you know. People get darker if they're in more sun, and get lighter skin if they're in less sun. But to try and protect the body from harmful effects from the sunlight, because sunlight has various energy levels in it that we call infrared, heat energy, and also has ultraviolet, which is really extreme energy, which actually causes damage to the cells because it's a higher frequency, causes a vibration of the atoms, which tends to cause bonds and things to break apart, which then damages your DNA. So yeah, I was just trying to highlight this. It wasn't sort of happening before. I'm having this problem again where it sort of goes crazy speed. So just read out that, see what it says about the photon. So this is all important because the experiment of the double slit uses electrons and photons to show the argument, right? So we've got to understand the basics first. What are we looking at?
Photon, also called light quantum, minute energy packet of electromagnetic radiation. The concept originated 1905 in Albert Einstein's explanation of the photoelectric effect, in which he proposed the existence of discrete energy packets during the transmission of light. Earlier, 1900, the German physicist Max Planck had prepared the way for the concept by explaining that heat radiation is emitted and absorbed in distinct units, or quanta. The concept came into general use after the US physicist Arthur H. Compton demonstrated, in 1923, the corpuscular nature of X-rays. The term photon, from Greek phos, photos, light, however, was not used until 1926. The energy of a photon depends on radiation frequency. There are photons of all energies from high-energy gamma and X-rays, through visible light, to low-energy infrared and radio waves. All photons travel at the speed of light. Considered among the subatomic particles, photons are bosons, having no electric charge or rest mass and 1 unit of spin. They are field particles that are thought to be the carriers of the electromagnetic field.
So, is it really massless, a photon? It may not be, because we're talking about energy, right? So it might be just so small that we can't measure it. But if we think of all particles as being energy, obviously energy has mass, because we can actually measure the weight of atoms and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the photon, the same as a massless thing, may be incorrect in my thinking anyway, and probably my mate's thinking. I did ask him about stuff, and I have got some comments that he made, which I might just show. So yeah, obviously that's it on that part of it about the photon. That's from Botanica. A short description. I see there's a movie about Oxford Dictionary. It's got what's his name, Mel Gibson in it. Kind of strange movie for him to be doing. It's meant to be the true story, a biohistory of the guy that developed the dictionary that we use today. And it took so many years to do it, of course. So we're talking about photon. The problem is some people get wrapped up in the quantum side of stuff, and it's hard to break out the thinking. So if you talk about the Big Bang Theory, it's very hard to think of other alternative conclusions to the same thing, and they sort of get they call the other people the alternative science guys, right? Everybody can have a theory about how the universe works and all that. Then you call it a crackpot or whatever. But yeah, for the mainstream things. Chinese rocket engine uses electric ions for interspace propulsion. I suppose you're talking about the latest rockets. Idea dismissed as impractical by NASA, who insists using wasteful rockets even into space. Well, the thing with rockets, obviously, it's taking up the fuel, right, inside the rockets. So they want to get away from that. So actually, you can use pure energy in the form of electricity to actually produce the thrust. That's what they're looking at, the EN drive, as they talk it, where that's using again electromagnetic radiation in the form of a microwave to actually produce a hole in the field in front of it, which kind of sucks it into the field, they reckon. So yeah, Chinese might actually be pioneers in all this stuff, and Chinese have the habit of stealing ideas from USA though, and generally they don't make it better, but maybe they've now cottoned on that they can actually get their own scientists making things better, or spending more money on it, right, than USA is, so they can get the jump on the technology, so to speak. There is actually a stealth drone that they have built. I was talking to people on my social about it. So yeah, if you're not part of the Twitter feeds, do join my Twitter, because I do post a lot of stuff there, and I don't always talk about it in live streams. Normally throw ideas out of there, see how it develops, and then maybe do a live stream later down the track. flywheel on a pole acts like anti-gravity. Yeah, that's all another topic. There was a series on BBC talking about heretics of science, and can't remember what the guy's name was, but he got disbarred from the Royal Institute lectures because he did a flywheel experiment where he was spinning over his head and saying it was anti-gravity. But they do use that flywheel in space. It's not such a stupid idea. They actually got maybe the idea from him even, but if you just use a solar cells to spin an electric motor on a flywheel, then you can use the energy in that flywheel to actually nudge the satellite further out into space to keep the orbit maintained. So it's not such a stupid idea, but it's not actually anti-gravity. It's using conservation of momentum, which I have talked about in another previous live, talking about the spin around the atom idea. So yeah, better move on. I know it's a big subject. I was a bit scared to do this topic. How are we going for time? 2 hours almost already. So we come back to that one. So someone's said here, why do photons move in a wave? See, they don't understand. The photon is not actually moving in a wave, it generates a field that is a wave. So this is the thing that confuses everybody. And that's why they say it acts like a particle or a wave. Because it's an energy packet, it's like a particle, right? So someone here said on here, just a bit narrow down, they don't. Photons move in a straight line. That might not even be correct either. It may, for this point in case, it probably we'll just stick with that idea. In a light wave, the electric field is oscillating, and the electric field associated with the light wave has a direction perpendicular to the velocity of the light wave, but the photons themselves travel in a straight line. And of course there's obviously going to be some debate on this. Photons do, what would even mean that if they travel in a straight line? I'm not too sure what they're debating here. They sort of get wrapped up in gravitational lens in there. What else do they have to say here? So now we've got a quantum theory guy jumping in. Photons can be described perfectly fine within a effective field theory for gravity, as long as the energy densities are far below the Planck scale. Even if you exceed these energies, it does not mean that you do not understand how the EMF field behaves. So you can see Reddit always has a lot of science debate going on. How people all see it slightly different or same in some cases. How does a photon travel from the sun to my eye without a trajectory? So again, it's sort of adding all this quantum nonsense. It can travel anywhere it likes, really. It just shows how little we know really about physics, and it's really just a lot of it's theory, guesswork, and mathematics. And mathematics is really a tool. It may work on our planet, but when you go off to another planet, does it still work? Do we go to the edge of the universe? Does it still work? Does the universe even have an edge? Is the universe flat? Is it a sphere? Does it curve? Could they explain why it looks like it's expanding? Because we're actually on a sphere that's maybe increasing in size, and the objects were sort of like on the three-dimensional surface of that sphere, right? So it looks like they're moving away from us, and it's expanding. So yeah, there's a lot of crazy theories and ideas out there that you can wrap your head around. But yeah, I like to think that maybe a photon is just traveling from one point to the other, unless it's interfered with, and it's emitting this wave as through the field effect. Looks like you're my number one watcher today, Hans. No, I've covered that before. Go and search on gravitational lens, and there's actually other conclusions and theories to how the light bends. So it actually doesn't prove that space is bent at all. Space-time is like a misdirection, I think. This is why we're never figuring out UFO stuff, because we have the wrong science ideas. Until we sort of break that mold and prove space-time wrong, we'll never get anywhere. They keep saying that you can go back in time and all that stuff with space-time and all that sort of stuff, but it's just sci-fi. Again, it's interesting sci-fi. It's good for sci-fis as well. What's that? The one. Okay, so this is another thing here. You've often heard the idea that electrons flow, right? Well, they don't actually flow, as this guy talks about here. If electron flows through it, why is it not used up by load via energy conversion, heat, light, etc.? And someone said here, it's not electrons flowing in a electric wire. In fact, electrons aren't even the only electrical charge carrier. The energy is carried by the electromagnetic field moving down the wire. The EMF field itself is a phenomenon of photons, light. The energy is used up. So you can just imagine going through a wire. It's actually photons jumping from atom to atom, or bouncing from atom to atom, as an energy packet. And that's what we now use through the invention of AC, electric. I mean, the only temporary percent in and around the wire, in the sense that travels down the wire from the source. So he's talking about like a electromagnetic field goes down the wire, and the energy is transferring bouncing from atom to atom. But it's not actually an electron that's flowing. It's not that actually an electron jumping from atom to atom. So that's a misconception there. But the electrons are not the energy. The energy is not lost. It is converted. So there you go. So this guy goes on a bit. Think of it as sound waves. Any sound you hear is fluctuating, vibrating pressure wave in the air, similar to those ripples on a pond, resulting from a disturbance. The sound waves carry energy. The energy will, as an example, move the diaphragm and the microphone, allowing sound to be amplified, recorded. So yeah, just think of it as a wave moving down an electric wire. And that's why you get magnetic fields. You know, when you put current down the wire, you get a magnetic field. So you can make electromagnets and electric motors, and you can do the opposite. You can you can spin the motor that creates a magnetic field, which then creates a electric movement EMF field in the wire, which then causes what they call electrons to flow, but it's actually causing the wave to move down the wire, which allows you then to store that energy within the actual battery, or whatever you want to call it, which is a bunch of atoms which are getting the energy absorbed into it, so to speak. So if you think of everything as being energy, it sort of connects together. So I suppose I'll post that in there. Still haven't got to the double slits yet. So energy, electron flow. Is it a myth? So yeah. Close tab on that one. Okay, so how do I going to talk about this double slit experiment? Physics in a minute. The double slit experiment. Let's see. I might be able to see if I can find a video. Original double slit experiment. I wonder if I can finish this topic in an hour. Okay, so we have got some matches coming up here. Which one could we use without getting copyright infringement? Tom Young's one. That one sounds pretty good. Looks like it might be a school kid doing it. Is it? Video transcript. Not too sure on that one. What else we got? Some videos are better than others, as you know. What's this one here? 3 minutes. Let's have a look. Physics. I'll just pause it for the time being. Looks like an Indian guy. We don't want talking heads, we actually want to experiment. Down the rabbit hole of the double slit experiment. So that one's going into it like I am. That looks like the one we were looking at before. Is that the one that might be a good one to use? Maybe from that point onwards, maybe. Yeah, that one looks like it might be on the right track. Yeah. Well, let's just play some of it anyway, and see how good it is. And we'll give the guy a plug on the side.
Be moving along the surface of a body of water. Based on his own experiments and extensive observations, Sir Isaac Newton decided that light was most like a particle. Newton was quite brilliant and advanced science in a number of fields, so for many people, because Newton says so, was solid evidence that light was a particle, and Newton's corpuscular theory of light was widely accepted. About 70 years after Newton's death, another scientist, Thomas Young, was working with light, and he came to believe that light behaved like a wave. Young's double slit experiment attempts to address the nature of light by looking at what happens when light passes through a pair of slits. If light behaved like a particle, for the double slit experiment we would expect to see two overlapping copies of the single slit pattern. This does not match our own observations. On the other hand, if light behaves like a wave, we expect to see the two waves interfere, adding together in some directions, and canceling each other in others. If we make some assumptions about how light propagates, we can predict that the intensity pattern on a screen placed far from the slits will be proportional to the product of a sinc squared term due to the width of a single slit and a cosine squared term due to the separation of the two slits.
Blah.
This is an excellent match for what we observe in lab, and is good evidence that light behaves like a wave. So the pattern that we observed was due to the interference of light that passed through one slit with light that was passing through the other slit, and it looks as though light is propagating as a wave. Does that mean that we could shine any light through this system and expect to see an interference pattern? For instance, could we shine the light from this flashlight through the double slit and see an interference pattern? It turns out the answer is no, and it's a problem of spatial coherence, which is the ability of light from one point on a wavefront to interfere with light from another point on a wavefront. This laser has a lot of spatial coherence, but a flashlight and most other sources have very little. So how did Thomas Young do his experiment? After all, they didn't have lasers in the 1800s. Well, it turns out it is possible to get these interference patterns to form, even when using a source normally considered incoherent. It just takes a little planning and some more work. Thomas Young recognized that not just any light could be used to see interference effects. In this quote from his lecture on the nature of light and colors, he lays out the conditions on the interfering portions of light as deriving from the same origin, arriving at the same point from different paths, and traveling in similar directions.
So really we're talking about electromagnetic waves here. If you think about energy, right? So anything that gives off electromagnetic energy as it moves, in fact, can generate waves that can interact with each other. So
this suggests two possible.
So normally they use a laser, but I think the original experiment they use a prism. So hopefully they're going to show us how to do it. So you actually get when it goes through and it makes an interference pattern, it actually splits out also the redshift and the ultraviolet on one end of the interference pattern on the original experiment using photons, for example. But this is where they advance it to try and do it with electrons, so I'll talk about that in a minute. And get an interference pattern, and then they talk about this is where they get the idea of spooky action at a distance and quantum entanglement, so it sort of all links into each other.
Approaches to the experiment. One approach is to mask your source down to a point. This is probably the technique that Young used, as he mentions using a pinhole in a shuttered window in his other publications. It has the advantage of being simple with the disadvantage of wasting much of the source light. Another approach is to simply place the source far away from the double slits. This approach allows astronomers to perform stellar interferometry experiments, and will allow you to view interference patterns using streetlights at night as a light source. A double pinhole system is quite easy to construct at home and can produce striking interference patterns using streetlights as a light source. To build the system, you'll need a piece of pipe, some cardboard to block most of one end of the pipe, and a pair of pinholes and a piece of opaque material. For my system, I used a piece of stainless steel shim stock, but good results can be had with the material from a soda can. To make the pinholes, the basic technique is to dimple the material with a pin.
Is that coming out loud enough? The video? Some volumes on videos is very low. Still out there, guys? So they're creating an experiment here to do the double slit experiment.
And then to sand away the protruding material on the other side until you have two nice pinholes. More detailed instructions can be found online from the do-it-yourself pinhole camera crowd. Keep in mind that you want your pinholes to be small and close together. Aim for 1/4 to 1/2 millimeter separation and a similar pinhole diameter. Smaller would be better. The assembly of the system is straightforward. Start by mounting the pinholes to the cardboard so the holes are unobstructed, then mount the cardboard in the tube, and finally tape everything together. One trick that I found helpful was to use aluminum foil to make the joint between the cardboard and tube light tight. To use the system, stand somewhere safe, hold the open end of the tube close to one eye, and look at a streetlight or stoplight at least 10 to 20 meters away. This is a picture I took of a car at a stoplight using the double pinhole system pictured earlier. Notice the strong dark bands in the stoplights and car headlights. The pattern is even more impressive in person. Warning: do not use this system to observe laser light or the sun. You may damage your eyesight. Okay, so the experiment shows interference, and we can even build one of these widgets if we want to see it for ourselves at home. But does light always behave like a wave? What about Einstein and photons? We know that, at least in some circumstances, light has to behave like a particle. Well, it turns out something interesting would happen if you did this experiment one photon at a time. We don't have the equipment to do it for you, but we can show you a simulation of what you would see. Right now, you are watching an animation showing what we would expect to see if we could do the double slit experiment with only a small number of photons in the system at a time. The top half of the screen is showing the photon impacts at each stage, and the bottom half is showing the accumulated pattern that we would get if we were exposing a photographic plate. For this animation, we are also assuming very narrow and very short slits, so the expected pattern is a cosine squared variation in the horizontal direction and uniform in the vertical direction. This animation is based on the results of two historic double slit experiments. a 1909 experiment which used very low but not quite single photon levels of light, and a 1973 experiment showing double-slit interference in a system launching single electrons. While we wait for the pattern to finish building, I want to thank you for watching and encourage you to investigate further if you have found the material presented here interesting.
Cool. So that wasn't really that good, was it? I wanted to see someone actually does the original. Probably one here. What's that one there? That was the Indian guy. What's this one up here? Just have a quick skim. Sort of thing you do in a classroom, I suppose, in a science lab. This might be one. That one looks like it's looking promising. Asking people what they know about photons, and of course the average bloke's not going to know. So this one's repeating what that last guy's done. This one looks actually quite interesting. So we'll just original double slit. We'll just skim portions of it anyway. Let's see if we can.
Newton proposed that light was a stream of particles, or corpuscles. He proposed this in his treatise Optics. But at the same time, a Dutch physicist named Huygens proposed that light was a wave. And this debate raged on until it was settled by the experiment I've recreated today, Thomas Young's double-slit experiment. To make sure I got the experiment right, I went to the original source. With the help of Brady Heron, I managed to get into the vault underneath the Royal Society in London. There I found Thomas Young's handwritten notes from 1803.
I brought into the sunbeam a slip of a card, about 1/30th of an inch in breadth, and observed its shadow, either on the wall or on other cards held at different distances, besides the fringes of colors on each side of the shadow. The shadow itself was divided by similar parallel fringes of smaller dimensions. Wow.
This is an experiment so simple that you could make it at home, and yet so fiddly that I have never seen it before done with sunlight.
I was thinking about doing it in a box, like a fridge box.
And you can take it out on the street.
Taking it out on the street.
Could I possibly interview you guys for about a minute? We're doing a science experiment. I have here is an empty box. And this is a little eyepiece where we can look in, and this is a hole. And I'm going to place this slide above that hole. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's two openings. Very narrow openings side by side. It's a double slit. Now before we have a look, we need to tilt it towards the sun a little bit. So we want the sun to hit this double slit directly. What are we going to see on the bottom of the
obvious
box?
thing you think you're going to see is you're going to see two lines.
Two lines on the bottom of the box. Two bright bands.
Two little lines.
Yeah.
I think it'll be one line instead of two.
I can expect to see the whole box lit up.
It'll probably be a kaleidoscope of some sort.
A bunch of colors.
Probably, yeah.
Rainbow, different colours.
There, have a look. You expected to see kind of one line. Is that what you see?
No.
I see dots.
How many?
It's one circle.
Well, there's one in the middle strongest, two either side.
The two on the outside are multicoloured.
Yeah, so now it's got some pictures of what they're seeing in the box, and as you can see here, that's what it produces. It creates bands, but it also has like those 3D glasses effect where you get the green and red separation happening at each end of the spectrum as well, because it's going through a prism. So yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's just nothing else apart from
Two slits.
two slits.
Two bright spots on the bottom of the box. But if light's behaving as waves, then the wave from one slit can interact with the waves from the other slit. I've got a demonstration here on a little pond where we can see this.
Yeah. So it's talking about the waveforms cancelling out, so you're getting this
This
lines.
pattern is created by the ripples from the two sources interacting with each other. Where they meet up peaks with peaks and troughs with troughs, the amplitude of the wave is increased. That's what we call constructive interference. But if the peak from one wave meets up with...
So that's pretty good experiment there.
Yeah, it's
that's because
bugging
the
you.
reds are going to meet up at different places than the blues.
And that's all that makes it.
Yeah, so what's he saying here? You saw the ones on the right were slightly coloured. That's because the reds are gonna meet up at different places than the blues. So right, so that's causing an interference pattern, but also splitting up the spectrum through the interference itself.
Because the reds are going to meet up at different places than the blues.
And that's all that makes the colour differences in different wavelengths.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
So the difference between
So
red and blue.
that red bin over there and the green part.
So that's the original experiment that he did. So how did they progress from there? So here he's talking about the two slits. Shown onto a wall with the photons coming in. Most people expect it to just light up two bands, right? Which doesn't happen because the particles are not just little spheres passing through there. There is some interaction happening. They're talking about passing a single photon through, but I think that's just means it's going through two. They're saying it's creating a duplicate particle of itself as it goes through using a single one. It causes an interference with itself or something. But I don't believe they can get a single particle of light because I don't think our experiments can, because as you know, light can be produced from an electron, right? So yeah, how do I explain it? So here it's showing how the interference pattern's happening, which they did on the pond here where you get the bands. And of course that's what we saw through the box as well. But that's using obviously a laser light, not pure light, right? And you're getting the interference pattern happening. Now open the second slit, and you expect rectangular strips on the second wall, but you actually see it's very different, the spots with electrons. So they're talking about the electron experiment, right? That it's also creating an interference thing. So my problem here is with the experiment that's being conducted through, because you got material here which is made of atoms, energy particles, and because if an electron is absorbed into an atom, obviously the electron can spit off electron off at a random angle, right? Any angle, which is going to cause interference, right? I tried to draw some pictures of what I was thinking. In fact, it may, so here's the double slit image. Why is it not opening? So they fire an electron beam instead of light through the two slits. Obviously it's going to have to be a beam because I don't see how a single electron is going to pass through here and create a duplicate of itself, which is what they're saying, it splits and creates an interference with itself. I don't believe it. I think it's lies. It's interacting with the material, the slit it's passing through in these experiments. So what is it we got here? There's the interference patterns that they were talking about on the video, and we're talking about it creating vectors as it's passing through space. Yeah, so what I tried to show here was you got electron beam, two electrons pass through the slits, that they're going to sort of, because they sort of repel each other, right? They're going to bounce away from each other when they get too close, and they're going to create a void in the middle there, right? Well, they're going to interfere. They're going to bounce around and interfere with each other and cause these. Eventually, it's going to form a pattern of the stripes. To me, they're talking about entanglement from this idea. Then they talk about when it's observed, that the electrons don't actually create the interference pattern, but how they're detecting it actually introduces problems in the experiment, because they're using photons to track where the electron is going, to try and work out if it's a single atom and all that sort of business. And they find it creates two patterns on the wall on the other side. Like everybody was thinking, it doesn't create the interference pattern anymore, because they've now added extra energy into here. We're trying to bounce off to track where the electrons are going. And to me that's fairly obvious, you know. And of course now they're sort of bringing up that quantum entanglement idea from it all. And what else? It's very hard to explain what I mean, but we'll just go through the information we've got here of what the double experiment did. So as we talked about, the electrons form interference patterns, and here's some patterns that they get. So how's electrons, how do you see electrons? Because they're pretty much invisible. Well, the old TV screens, right, they have phosphorus coating on, so when the electron passes through the slit and lands on the surface coating here, it causes light to be emitted that you can see with a camera. So they try to lower down how much electrons are being ejected, and it starts to form these patterns here, and of course over time, if they overlay the capture, they can start to see that it forms these interference patterns, or they can increase the amount of electrons passing through the slits. So I still think it's causing interference with itself, not actually what they're saying to be with entanglement. So they're saying here one possibility might be the electrons somehow interfere with each other. Sure they do. So they don't arrive in the same places if they were alone. However, the interference pattern remains even when you fire electrons one by one. So I think that's just nonsense right there. There's no way they know it's one electron. I still think the electrons are emitted from the materials within the experiment itself, which is then causing the interference. It's like they're sort of not really thinking about it to me. It's like experiments that work on the surface of the Earth don't work in space, because the electromagnetic field of the planet is different. Of course, there's none in space. Well, it's weaker in space as further you go away. This also talks about here, strangely, even individual electron contributes to one dot. So yeah, I thought, can you really make one electron? Is it really possible to dial down your instruments to make one electron? And so I come across this one here. Is it possible to fire one single electron at a time? What happens if it hits the sensor piece on the experiment though, you know? Where was that one? What was that one talking about? Disproving the quantum consciousness connection. That's the next one. So yeah, what they mean by firing one electron, if it hits there, it's going to get absorbed and bounce back, right? So you can't fire just one electron. Can you fire it just through one hole? Are they saying it sort of splits and goes through two holes? It doesn't sort of make sense. So to me, there's a conflict there in sensibility. Well, you could, and of course, this guy here asked the same question. Sort of going to run out of time, aren't I? Well, we're just guessing that only one single electron is fired because only one gets detected. So this guy here, another quantum guy, PhD, right? He talks about yes, no. No, it's been done, and experimenters know what they are doing. You can measure how fast electrons are going and measure the rate that they appear on the screen. This combined with other things means there's no doubt that at most one electron is transversing the apparatus. In the experiment, it was calculated that the effective mean distance between electrons was over 100 kilometers. I think you can then safely assume that there's never two electrons in the apparatus. I don't think you can. There's other factors that you got to take into consideration. Yes, you really get interference patterns when at most one particle was transversed in the apparatus at the time. It's not one particle though. It seems if each electron somehow knows where in future the past electrons were. So this is where I think quantum theory goes completely wrong. They're making assumptions here. As my friend would say, they're retards. A similar thing happens with radioactive decay. Imagine having a bunch of free neutrons on the table. Ridiculous, but let's suppose you could. Half-life of a free neutron is 10 minutes. That means if you start with, say, 1,000, after 10 minutes there will only be close to 500. Another 10 minutes, 250. Yeah, what's he trying to say? So with particles and double slit experiment, there is a intrinsic randomness in position. With radioactive decay, there's intrusive randomness in time. Contained magnetic field placed into two slit experiments will shift the interference pattern, even though the electrons never travel through the field. It is sensed by the electric magnetic vector potential. So they're sort of going, not taking into account that the electron itself produces a field, which we may not understand yet. Energy fields, right? So here we got another doctor that's saying no doubt there's only one electron at a time goes through two slit apparatus. The problems with quantum are not that it behaves mysteriously, it is with the interpretations and expectations of the experimenters. Yeah. Okay, so we got a guy down here that sort of talks more sense. I think they might be able to fire a single electron at a time, but the problem here is that we cannot make a perfect vacuum on Earth equal to space. The current record vacuum made at CERN is around 1,000 atoms per cubic centimeter. So even if we fire a single electron, there are millions of other electrons about, making such an experiment pretty worthless. So even he's sort of debunking the idea of the double slit there, which is basically what I'm saying, because the material is made of atoms that have electrons as well. Firing a single photon is nonsense too. Photons are waves, and how big is a wave? A radio wave hundreds of meters long, or gamma ray a trillionth of a meter long. Undoubtedly photons come a lot smaller, and we do not know how small. So yeah. See, atoms also randomly emit photons, right? Atoms in our body can emit radiation. Is it possible with great precision? Blah blah blah. So this idea of a single particle, yeah. What did my mate say? He talked about the double slit. Well, he always makes me laugh. So he talks about the cat in the box thing. Two possibilities: the cat's either alive or it's dead. But in quantum theory, they talk about the in-between possibilities that it's alive or dead. So they're talking about probabilities and stats and maths. So he's saying not both. Two possibilities only, not both. But in quantum physics or mechanics, they talk about that can be both at the same time. Both is not even an option. That's not math, it's BS. Why is it needed? Answer: they think matter is made from fundamental particles that came from creation day reality. Doesn't match their theory, so they make up more layers of BS on top of, rather than admit they were, let's see, got it zoomed in too much, they were wrong. So he's talking about the Big Bang Theory, that everything come from a creation day event. These retards can't even do math correctly. They magic time and parallel universe with creation days. They can't do science. They have no ability to differentiate between real and fantasy, because he's talking about quantum theory here. The cat thing is just a way to express it, but it's fake because it starts with premise of one or the other, then switches to both. Super precision. A truth table only gets 2 results, not 4. As to wave function, use a smoke ring as example. As said, there are a whole bunch of different particle waves. They differ in size, density, and complexity of interval axis. So this is a guy that's sort of doing his own theory of the universe, fractal density energy that he's talking about. He's not a PhD or anything, but he's an inventor. He's probably done a lot of online degrees. Different forces for waveform creation. Now, these waveforms are for each of these axes, so they are multiple wave functions for each particle wave as part of the bigger creation day redshift. So yeah, he's not much, he's sort of poking holes in all the Big Bang and quantum ideas out there. So I've tried to get him to come on a live stream sometime so he can actually talk about it and what his new ideas are, which explains it better. He's a bit like electric universe type idea, a thinker. Well, he's not actually pro electric universe and such, because they get some stuff wrong too. But yeah, it's good to have a look at different ideas out there, what other people think. Question everything, as I keep saying. So yeah, we're finished with the single electron idea being sort of nonsense, really. So that sort of breaks down the experiment somewhat. So what they're saying here at the end here on this one, hang on, does anyone say anything in the chat? You're still here. Oh, that's alright. You can always watch back bits that you miss. We haven't had really too many people hop on here that's into the double slit and quantum theory ideas. So I don't class myself as a scientist like these guys. I want, maths. I sort of go blah, and but there is a thing called common sense, and how you can actually see there's some nonsense in what they're saying, and they're guessing themselves, right? So here they're saying here, could it be that electron somehow splits and passes through both slits at once, interferes with itself, and then recombines to meet the second screen as a single localized particle? To find out, you might place a detector by the slits to see which slit the electron passes through. and that's the reality, the really weird bit. If you do that, the pattern on the detector screen turns into the particle pattern of two strips as seen on the first picture above, and the interference pattern disappears. Somehow the very act of looking makes sure that the electrons travel like well behaved little tennis balls, and that's, they know they're being spied on and detected to be caught in the act of a foreign weird quantum shenanigans. What does this experiment tell us? It suggests that we call particles such as electrons somehow combine characteristics of particles and characteristics of waves. That's the famous wave-particle duality of quantum mechanics. It also suggests that the act of observing, of measuring a quantum system has a profound effect on the system. This is where we're talking about quantum entanglement. The question of exactly how that happens constitutes the measurement problem of quantum mechanics. So by just observing it, you change the outcome. But really, they're changing the experiment by trying to detect the particle, because they're adding more energy into the electron. So if it's going through a slit, surely the slit, the material that's in the experiment is going to cause electrons to be formed and ejected, right? So if an electron bounces off the edge of the slit going into the hole, it's going to cause another electron to be ejected, and cause an interference pattern. But if you're sending photons down here to try and detect where the electrons go on, it's absorbing into the electrons of the material itself, and it's going to cause ejections of electrons, which changes the pattern, so to speak. It may somehow stop the interference happening because you're changing the energy signature of the electron going through. So yeah, I think maybe they're just messing up stuff. They're just making a conclusion from it all the time, which is wrong, thinking that their experiment is perfect. So let's go through and have a look at some of the other stuff. I'll just paste the link to that down there anyway. Oh, why are you swearing? I was retard. Yep. Double slit using electrons. Looks like I'm not going to be able to cover the subject completely. So this guy goes through the double slit, which is quite a good write-up actually. Goes through it pretty good. Particle pattern, waveform pattern. So this one was actually quite a good write-up here. But he makes a good point at the end here, that they can't exclude outside interference anytime. So even if you're seeing a wave pattern, right, and that's outside influence is going to interfere with it sometime and create two slits. So he's talking about how the interference pattern happens by adding two waves together. It should make it bigger, or it should cancel out to make it a zero there. So the profound bit. So I might just get it to read it out. think it's the right bit.
The profound bit. In an attempt to understand these effects in the above experiment, we reopened both slits and turned down the current of the electron gun to allow one electron at a time to hit the screen. Remarkably, the fringe pattern returns, albeit slowly, defying the idea that it is the wave function of one electron is interfering with its neighbor. In fact, it is clear that the electron interferes with itself. Stop laughing at the back.
Very true. That's silly, isn't it? I think the whole idea is silly. Anyway, was it this one? It's one of the better explanations anyway. Do I read out more of it? Forming a hypothesis for consciousness-led waveform function collapse. Sounds like a mouthful, that one. Now let's see, disproves this. Just read that bit out.
Forming a hypothesis for consciousness-led wave function collapse. Earlier I stated that I believe I can show that the double slit experiment disproves the idea that consciousness can change the behavior of matter and light. First, let us triangulate together what proponents of the idea claim and shape into some form of rough working hypothesis. It is important to do this, as this is what we should be aiming to disprove experimentally.
Okay, so just read out that.
The QC hypothesis: consciousness can exist separately from matter. This consciousness can be shown to have a physical effect in the collapse of the de Broglie wave function of a traveling particle. Consciousness is otherwise physically imperceptible. This effect is best shown in Young's double slit experiment. Let us question for a second what we would expect to find if the double slit experiment was repeated in a world in which the QC hypothesis is true. An unavoidable consequence of the fact that we can detect or protect our experiment from incursions and interactions by disembodied consciousness is that we should expect that there would be occasions in which the wave function collapses for no discernible reason.
That's a good point he makes there. So we're talking about spooky action at a distance, right? Entanglement.
It would be as if we attempted to gather which way information with the later addition of a photon source and a conscious observer, despite us doing no such thing. If the QC hypothesis were true, we would expect to see random wave function collapses. This has never been shown to happen. The results of the double slit experiment are consistent. Researchers don't record spontaneous wave function collapse.
So he's saying it's really hard to exclude outside interference in experiments to prove entanglement, which I agree with.
It is that consistency that strongly implies that the QC hypothesis is incorrect in some way. Either consciousness does not exist separate from matter, or consciousness is not responsible for wave function collapse.
Yeah, so there's probably some other theory out there that explains what's going on. So people are probably, well-written article. I'm a biology student, but I have to learn about the double slit experiment as part of my course, and you explained this complex topic far better than any lecture could. So it is a complex topic though. So thank you for your effort to demystify the double slit experiment. However, I find your assumptions to have fundamental errors. So obviously people are going to debate it. So it's like saying the human mind can connect to another human mind using entanglement. But there's another guy here actually did a good thing, which I might just finish up on. Let's see, I probably haven't got... new evidence could break the standard view of quantum mechanics. Probably have to rush through a bit more here. So this one was actually quite interesting. Electromagnetic waves and their properties. That's quite a good introduction to it. I'll just go through stuff because I'll probably have to have dinner soon. I knew it's going to be a tough one to go through. People are not all going to agree on what people are saying. You can see through tiny slitted eye slits. I have 20/40 vision, but much better when I look through tiny slits. If you polarize the light using Polaroid filters, you can control which slit the light passes. Yeah, I got actually good little video on polarization, and it talks about it, which I'll play in a minute, a clip of it, and post it to you to have a watch. Yes, making a little pinhole that you look through, you can actually see things better. I suppose because you're making a beam that's instead of your eye being a bit like being flooded by photons, you're actually concentrating the photons on one region of the photocells of your eye, so it's able to look at it's like overexposure, right? You're sort of just getting rid of the overexposure, and it's concentrating information on the same cells of the eye, but it's able to process the more information from it. So yeah, there's another thing here talking about how they create entangled particles, and I thought I was reading this and I thought bit of BS here. This guy's written a book and he talks about stats. Let's see, talking about polarization and stats, and here we go, particle stats. It's all theoretical, and I think it's a lot of magic. But this is a really good article though. Apparently you can't actually they passed how to create a quantum particle. I just have to be late half an hour. Just being interrupted. The splitting, known as spontaneous down conversion, is a low probability event. Only about 1 in a billion photons in the incident being interacts with quantum noise and divides, and the rest continues straight through the crystal unaffected. So they use a barium borate crystal in their experiments to say they create a photon pair, but you can see here it's not just going to be one photon, right? Apparently a guy used a tissue on long exposure. You can't see the guy moving the tissue along the beam, but the beam hits the tissue and creates a light emission, and you can see as it goes through the crystal it splits into two, which they redirect each way to create a quantum entangled pair, as they call it, of photons. I'll post the link there to that article there. And how they do it with the polarization in crystals. Spooky action at a distance, is it? Entangled particles. So yeah, if your brain hasn't exploded by now trying to wrap your head around what they're trying to talk about. I suppose there's meant to be a video here somewhere. I suppose it's this one here. But we won't have time to go through that. This is the guy's video talking about explained and debunked quantum entanglement, which is quite interesting, and the Bell test experiments, which I'm not going to have time to talk about. But they're talking about they disprove Einstein wrong, and using 100,000 gamers using this Bell experiment, where people were apparently typing in random binary digits. I think it says here somewhere, and then they would send it off to be processed statistically to see how many people were typing in the same information or something, entangled particles as they're talking about. To me, I couldn't really figure out really what they were talking about. I think the article hasn't got enough information about it. But this guy does a video talking about the Bell test and stuff, which is really, really good. Of course, there's problems with the Bell test. They talk about loopholes in the testing. Again, this is where the experiments are wrong, you see. This is where you got to question, is the experiment perfectly sound? And it turns out there was problems with the Bell experiment. And it goes in, they've actually got a wiki page on it. Talking about the sampling stats, double detections, failure of rotational invariance, constants of loophole, memory loophole. This goes on and on and on. Talking about the experiment, sources of error and optical polarization, sources of error in the detector. So this is why you got to keep questioning things, see what problems are with the experiment. If the experiment is wrong, then the conclusion has got to be wrong, right? But people on TV that talk about quantum entanglement and it's real and all this, don't talk about the problems. They don't question the end result, and these people like myself out there that's going to question it all. So I'll just post these links here because I probably ain't got time to talk about it. Bell experiment. Einstein proven wrong. It's that one there. Oh, what's going on? Oh yeah. Oh, we just got a sub, Harry. Who did we get? Kara. Hello Kara, welcome to the Out There channel. Like I said, I won't be doing live streams only in the weekends from now on, because there's just not enough people watching them. So I'm sort of wasting my time a bit with them because people don't even watch the old ones. Until people start watching, there's no really incentive to keep spending my time doing this. So I'll probably be doing smaller videos because people got time to watch the smaller ones. But I like people to interact, you know. The interaction on live streams is actually good, and people to come on as guest speakers and talk about stuff. So we can debate things, right? And then we got loopholes, problems with experiments, things people are not taken into consideration. So and of course we got this one here, talking about standard view of quantum mechanics, which is another thing. Breakage. What did they say on this article here? Maybe just read out some of it. Let's see what they're talking about here. And the last thing is that little video. I'll just play some of it. I want you to go and have a watch of it all as well. I think it's about 15 minutes long, maybe. There's a new guy that's on a YouTube video, so go and give him some love, I guess. But yeah, I liked what he was saying and the problems that he was pointing out with quantum entanglement.
New evidence could break the standard view of quantum mechanics. Fiona MacDonald, the 24th of May 2016. Quantum mechanics is difficult to understand at the best of times, but new evidence suggests that the current standard view of how particles behave on a quantum scale could be very, very wrong. In fact, the experiment hints that an alternative view predicted almost a century ago might have been right this whole time. And before you get too bummed about that, the good news is that, if confirmed, it would actually make quantum mechanics a whole lot simpler to understand. So let's step back for a second here and break this down. First things first, this is just one study, and a lot more replication and verification would be needed before the standard view comes crumbling down. So don't go burning any textbooks just yet, okay? Good. Now that we've got that straight, here's what's going on. Right now, one of the most confusing but important aspects of quantum mechanics is the idea that particles don't have a location until they're observed. We've talked about this a few times, but what that basically means is when quantum physicists talk about a particle, there's a cloud of possibilities for its location, and it's described by a mathematical structure known as a wave function. As soon as a particle is observed, its wave function collapses. And only then does it have a specific position. The mathematics behind all of that is clear enough, and scientists can use it to work with particles on a quantum scale. But for the rest of us, it's all a little odd. Even Albert Einstein had issue with this part of the standard view, which we often called the Copenhagen interpretation. Einstein's biographer Abraham Pais remembers this conversation, as Dan Falk reports for Quantum magazine.
Okay, so we'll just read out the rest of it, because it's quite interesting. Although it does go on a bit. But yeah, I think it's quite interesting to read it out.
We often discussed his notions on objective reality. I recall that during one walk Einstein suddenly stopped, turned to me and asked whether I really believed that the moon exists only when I look at it. So why did the Copenhagen interpretation become our standard view then? Well, we did have an alternative, known as the pilot wave theory, or Bohmian mechanics, which states that particles really do have precise positions, whether or not we're observing them. But it never really took off, in part, because it would mean that the world must be strange in other ways, as Falk explains. To simplify it greatly, the weirdest part about Bohmian view is that it insists upon non-locality, which basically means that anything in the universe can affect anything else, no matter how far apart these objects are. That's the same idea behind quantum entanglement, or spooky action at a distance, but Bohmian mechanics takes it a step further and suggests that the entire universe is dependent on actions happening to individual particles. One of the final blows for this Bohmian view was delivered in 1992 when a study claimed that a particle following these laws would end up taking a trajectory that was so bizarre that they described it as surreal, which is saying a lot coming from quantum physicists.
So, yeah, just go on a bit.
But now, almost 25 years later, researchers in Canada have conducted an experiment that they say invalidates that 1992 paper and suggests that Bohmian mechanics might still have some potential. The experiment in question is the double slit experiment. It works like this: you fire a beam of photons at two parallel slits in front of a detector screen, and instead of seeing just two bands of light, or photons, on the other side, you see a stripy interference pattern. You can see the pattern in the diagram below.
So we've covered that a bit already. It's not a simple topic, that's for sure. And it's good to see people are questioning the experiments. People are just not accepting the mainstream science view of things. And if there's other conclusions out there about how crazy our universe works, we should actually consider it, because we still don't know what UFOs are, whether it's interdimensional, whether it's aliens coming from other planets, or both, or it's what our reality of the world, universe is in a nutshell. What is life? What is death? It's more questions than answers, right? So we've got to keep pushing the boundaries.
The experiment is often used as evidence of the Copenhagen interpretation, because particles don't have a defined position until they're measured, so of course they're showing up all over the place. Back in 1992, it also disproved Bohmian mechanics. At the time, scientists claimed that if a photon really does have a position, like the Bohmian view states, then it would pass through just one slit. But it somehow always ends up being recorded as having passed through both slits, so the photon would have a surreal trajectory. Hence no more Bohmian view. But now a group of researchers led by Ephraim Steinberg from the University of Toronto in Canada have conducted this experiment here, showing that it does make sense with Bohmian mechanics, as long as people remember to consider in locality that idea that particles can affect other particles anywhere in the universe. In their experiment, the team used pairs of entangled photons, which are inextricably linked, so that whatever happens to one will automatically affect the other. No matter how far apart they are, there's that spooky action again. This allowed the researchers to interrogate one of the photons to gain information about the path taken by the other. That interrogation returned surreal results, just as a 1992 study had predicted. But Steinberg and his team say that's only a problem without an locality. As Falk explains for quanta, the farther the first photon travels, the less reliable the second photon's report becomes. The reason is an locality. Because the two photons are entangled, the path that the first photon takes will affect the polarization of the second photon. The problem isn't that Bohm trajectories are surreal, said Steinberg. The problem is that the second photon says that Bohm trajectories are surreal, and, thanks to non-locality, its report is not to be trusted. The results have been published in Science Advances, and if they're verified, it could very well shake up our view of quantum mechanics, potentially making it easier to understand. All you have to do to make sense of quantum mechanics is to say to yourself, when we talk about particles, we really mean particles. Then all the problems go away, Goldstein told Falk. Things have positions. They are somewhere. It is a far simpler version of quantum mechanics than what you find in the textbooks, he added.
The sub is reduced again. So I think Google doesn't know what it's doing. I think it has to verify the new sub somehow. I don't know, they're doing some crazy stuff, Google. So yeah, it's quite an interesting article, but they could be wrong, of course. So yeah, it's good to see that people are always questioning things and trying to think differently about things, which might open up some new areas. But this guy here talks about polarization of photons, which is really good in the Bell experiment. So I'll just post a link to his video here. I suppose these guys have got to take off. I don't know what you're talking about. Hands. Everybody's got their own world view, right? So we've got to always question what the convention science out there keeps trying to force on us. So this guy here is really fascinating what he actually tells us about entanglement, and he only just added it not long ago. Again, he stirs up a few people, and he's a UK person too. So, karma. Entanglement. Okay, so we'll just play a part of this guy's thing. It goes into a bit, 18 minutes, right? So we'll just play a wee bit.
Entanglement and Bell test experiments, a local hidden variable solution. Einstein believed any apparent spooky action at a distance could be explained using local hidden variables. Many people thought this was his biggest ever mistake. During the 1920s and 30s, Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein held a series of public debates about quantum mechanics. In particular, these debates questioned an element of quantum theory called non-locality. Bohr's position was that there was no way to measure the state of a quantum particle without disturbing it, and Einstein wanted to disprove this. So, in 1935, Einstein proposed a thought experiment in which two particles with corresponding properties are produced from a single quantum event. These are called entangled particles. He claimed a measurement on one particle would give us information about the other particle without disturbing it. In 1964, John Stuart Bell used a principle from set theory in an attempt to resolve the issue. He produced a mathematical expression called Bell's inequality that appeared to show that certain correlations between entangled particles cannot be reproduced if all objects have just local properties, or what Einstein called local hidden variables. A theorem was formed and named after Bell. The theorem states that local hidden variables cannot reproduce the predictions of quantum mechanics. But there's a problem with using Bell's inequality in relation to quantum mechanics. If the detection of a quantum particle itself is a quantum event, then the very nature of particle detection should be probabilistic. Bell's inequality holds if 100% of particles are detected, but if detection is probabilistic, then we could never get 100% detection rate, and so Bell's inequality simply does not apply. If we visualize photons as small coins, then it's easy to imagine how its probability of being detected could be altered. Coins that approach the detector with a full face showing are more likely to be detected than those with just a thin edge showing. Now let's cover some of the basics. One way to create entangled photons is to fire high-energy ultraviolet light into a nonlinear crystal. Most of the high-energy photons pass straight through, but occasionally one will hit the crystal lattice and split into two photons, each with half the energy of the original. Now, let's just suppose a photon has a property that we'll refer to as a polarization angle. For example, this one is 5 degrees. Its entangled partner will have a related property, and let's say the polarization angles of entangled particles differ by 180 degrees. Even though we might assume that this property exists, we can't be sure, because we've no way to measure it. All we can do is force or resolve it into one of two states, and then try to detect that state. So, assuming the polarization angle property exists, its exact value is inaccessible to us, as we've no way to measure it. Its value is entirely hidden from us. Such properties are local to photons or other entities, and their values can vary. As such, they're called local hidden variables. By way of introduction to Bell test correlations, consider some photons passing through two polarizing filters. Half the photons pass through the first filter, and when both filters are in alignment, all the photons that pass through the first filter also pass through the second. Now if we turn the second filter, so it's at an angle of 45 degrees from vertical, we find that only half the photons that reach it get through. At 90 degrees, none of the photons get through. But things get a lot less linear when we consider an angle like 22.5 degrees. At this angle, 85% of the photons that reach the second filter pass through. It appears that the probability of a photon passing through the second filter is given by the cosine squared of the angle between the two filter alignments. Now, what if we were to separate the two filters and send one of an entangled pair of photons through each of them? What quantum mechanics says about this is that entangled photons do not have a single polarization state. They exist in all possible states at the same time. This is called superposition. The photons approach their respective filters, and one will reach its filter first. At this point, the photon either takes on the same alignment as the filter, or it takes on an alignment perpendicular to the filter alignment. Either way, the state of the superposition ends. Only the photons that assume the same alignment as the filter will pass through it. As soon as the first particle hits its filter and is forced into one of two states, then instantaneously its entangled partner will end its superposition, and it will somehow acquire equal and opposite properties. It is this mysterious communication between two different physical locations that Einstein called spooky action at a distance. The probability that B passes through its filter is therefore influenced by photon A's earlier interaction. This concept forms the basis of Bell test experiments. But in order to do the Bell test properly, we need a way of counting the photons that don't pass through the filter. Fortunately, there's a device called a polarizing beam splitter that can do the job. It's not 100% efficient, but it's just about good enough for our purposes. So, with a polarizing beam splitter, we can identify photons that pass straight through as detected at 1, and reflected photons as detected 0. Now, if we include a source of entangled particles, we now have the configuration of a Bell test experiment. Here's a table that shows a set of Bell test correlations. Note that the important thing is whether or not the detections are the same at both sides or different. This table shows what quantum mechanics predicts. You're not supposed to be able to reproduce these figures using local hidden variables. But this table of quantum mechanics prediction says nothing about how many cases of one-sided detections we should expect. And in real experiments, these counts are the biggest, most significant counts of all. Bell test experiments are prone to a lot of experimental errors, but it's only by dismissing all the one-sided detections as experimental errors that a case can be made in favour of spooky action. So how might we explain this huge number of one-sided detections? Well, if on average there was, say, a 50% chance of detection, then the expected breakdown of detected or not on either side could easily be predicted. But as there's no way to record cases of not detected at both sides, we're left with elevated perceived probabilities for the three remaining scenarios. Then given that there's bound to be some experimental errors, we end up with the prediction that only about 30% or less of the photon pairs will get detected at both sides. And this prediction matches actual experimental results. The figures used in Bell's inequality relate to the long-term expected correlations between same outcomes, where there's a 1 at both sides or a 0 at both sides, and different outcomes, where there's a 1 at one side and a 0 at the other. From the experimental results, we convert the same and different counts into probabilities, and then we subtract one from the other to get the correlation values. We find that real experiment correlations bear some rough similarity to these highlighted values that are predicted by quantum mechanics. Note that a correlation of 1 means that the outcomes are 100% correlated, i.e. they're all the same, and a correlation value of -1 means that the outcomes are 100% anti-correlated, meaning they're all different.
So this guy actually knows, understands it all, right? So yeah, he's really good. So at the end here, he shows the problems of it, and then he makes a summary, which is quite good.
Show how the quantum mechanics predictions differ in the two cases. We can extend the hidden variable solution to cover the measurement of spin. For example, consider the case where there's 45 degrees between the filter alignments. We use a different arrangement of the light and dark areas when working with spin. We simply have light and dark semicircles. These highlighted sectors are the ones that lead to different results, and again, they form 1/4 of the whole area. We will use two new hidden variables, spin angle and spin detection, and we simply use theta instead of 2 theta in the probability distribution expression. Some of you may have heard of the detection loophole, so I'll just clarify what that's all about. Loopholes are holes in the experimental design or setup. They are not arguments like mine that attacks the fundamental logic. One of the loopholes is called the detection efficiency or fair sampling loophole. If the long-term expected outcome of a particular run of the experiment was 25% same to 75% different, then if our sample of outcomes isn't big enough, we could easily just be unlucky and get 20% same and 80% different. So our sample will have been basically unfair. In 2013, a Bell test was run over several days, where they got coincidence counts, which is detection of both sides, of over 1 million for each of the 4 runs. This may have closed a fair sampling loophole, but with an efficiency of around 25%, it comes nowhere near to eliminating the detection probability issue. This begs the question, can Bell's inequality be of any use? If we assume 100% efficiency, then hidden variable theory cannot violate the inequality. But with anything less than 100% efficiency, it can. So by necessity, the inequality requires 100% efficiency and nothing less. If Bell test experiments could ever run at 100% efficiency, then local hidden variables would have a problem. It would also mean that some quantum events can be 100% deterministic. So I look forward to that day if it ever happens, because the results would certainly be very interesting. Do Bell test experiments support spooky quantum weirdness? And is it likely anytime soon that we will perform a Bell test with 100% efficiency? The answer to both these questions is a big no. Despite what you may have heard elsewhere, Bell test experiments provide no evidence whatsoever to support the notion of spooky action at a distance.
Okay, so I'll leave it there. So yeah, you just got to keep on the science view that everybody says is real, and it's people like this guy here, April last year, that's put out a really good video here, explain it and what the problems are and why it doesn't actually prove quantum entanglement, quantum weirdness. So it looks like Hans finally got upset here, and maybe unsubbed. So you know, that's the way it goes. Some people like what I do, some people don't. Using a swear word there, a W word. Oh well, Hans, hope you change your mind and come back, but not tearing it down for supposed flaws, loopholes. Obviously this guy's got a being the bear. Well, unfortunately we have to tear down things because the world view is obviously wrong, you know, and quantum entanglement may have other explanations of what's going on, and we should actually always consider looking deeper into the problem. Not just accepting dark matter is real, dark energy is real, because so far they haven't detected it. Big Bang Theory, everybody wants the Big Bang Theory to be right because it means that there's a superpower God that actually created the universe, rather than looking at it in the sense that the universe is God and everything that is made is from God. You know, atoms are made, energy is made, energy is recycled. The universe is not going to come to a big end, you know, it's probably been forever ongoing. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Go and watch that full video properly. I've got to dash off now and look forward to other theories out there, other ways to look at entanglement. So just keep on at it, guys, and hopefully it all connects into the paranormal realm as well as the UFO realm. So and then those can be explained as well rather than being called pseudoscience. But do check out those new paranormal shows. Just want to see what that apparition they catch is explained or not. So just going to wind down now, and I'll see you again in the weekend. And I'll see if I can click off this. Do like and share, and take care on the roads.